Hello, and welcome to a podcast episode. I know I don't normally start the episodes like this, but I wanted to do this because I was reviewing the video footage from the episode last night, and I found out that the audio quality is not the best for the first half, and it gets better in the second half of the episode. But I wanted to record this as a way to let you know that. And also to let you know that this episode is with my dear friend Elle, who we often have conversations like this, like the one you're about to hear. And they're random run-ins that often happen in Austin, Texas. And it's such a beautiful thing that happens whenever I see Elle and we could talk for hours. There's always a learning that I get about my life or she gets about her life. And it creates such a magic. So Elle is an incredible human being, such a beautiful soul. And I feel like you'll understand that if you check out this episode. So thank you for listening. A little abnormal introduction for this one, but I hope you enjoy it. And let's get right into the episode with Elle.
If you want anything cut, like, I know that's not very much not in your nature.
Yeah, very much not.
But I also know that there are things you want cut from Twitter or posted on Twitter, and you're like, I don't want that. You're literally cutting by virtue of you going from Instagram stories to Twitter. Like, it sounds so funny when I say that.
I know.
But you are, right?
But recently, the last 2 weeks, there hasn't been one thing that I've shared on Instagram stories that I haven't shared to Twitter.
Yes. So you shared the post about
the low-rise pants?
The low-rise pants.
Yeah, I did.
Wow.
I did.
Wow.
2 days late. I paid attention to that. So there was a delay.
No, that's amazing.
But I did. Yeah. I got a couple messages about it too.
Wow.
I've been really thinking about what we talked about around like allowing yourself, so much of allowing yourself to be seen in your fullness are those like small looping negative self-talk that maybe you've had for many, many years, and it feels so heavy and it feels so real because you've had that voice in your head saying that thing for so many years.
That you believe it.
That you believe it, but also like putting a flashlight to that voice is so scary. Like, I don't even want to look at it, let alone like have other people look at it. But I think there's so much power, like when you read words that are coming from someone who had an insecurity and transcended it and is able to actually not only write it, which is cathartic for me, but then like sharing it. Those are 2 processes for me. Yeah. There's writing and then there's sharing. Like, I could have let that die in my notes app, right? But I just said, you know what? What would the highest version of me do? Like, what would like my 13-year-old self be proud of me for? And it would be, I'm going to share it in the place I feel comfortable. And then I'm going to give it space and then say, can I share this in a place I don't feel comfortable, which is Twitter. Yeah. And then 2 days later, there was. But it was because partially of our conversation in the car. Like that conversation we had where you were like, you're hiding again. Basically, I was like, he's right. You always get me, right? In the time I need it. It's like an intervention, a divine intervention of Danny Miranda. And then I'm like, no, Danny's right. And so then I did. I did it like 2 hours later.
Wow. Mm-hmm. I'm so proud of you. I didn't even see that.
Thank you. I just keep adding to my mega threads. Good. It's like probably a book at this point. So many words.
You realize it's going to turn into a book someday. Like that's where it's going.
Oh, dang, you think?
Yeah, definitely.
Like, you think what those, like, the archive of writings? Or just writings like that? And what do you see?
Yeah, every time I see those Instagram stories, and then I say to myself, oh, like, this is turning into a book. And especially when you, like, say, I don't want to share them in other places. And especially when you're like, I don't want this to live forever. Because that's what James Altucher talks about, where it's like, if you don't want to share it, that's the thing you actually need to share the most.
Interesting.
And so the fact that you don't want to share it, 1 speaks to its truth, and 2 speaks to like how by actually sharing it, you overcome something within you.
This is coming to me, hearing you say that. So when I shared the low-rise pants story, which I wrote, like what I love about Instagram Archive is you can see exactly the minute that you posted it. That is so interesting to me because I write my most vulnerable stuff near midnight.
Wow.
I mean, it's like seriously like a reflection from the day that I cannot contain in myself any longer, that I just have to cathartically write out. And then it's almost like I want to post this in a very bad time for anyone to see it. I've noticed that about me.
Interesting.
It's like if I, like who's looking at
gonna see
Instagram
it
stories at midnight, right? And like but I'm still sharing, but I'm sharing inconveniently.
Wow.
It's on purpose. I really
That
like
is-
into myself.
That's
You know?
so fascinating.
Isn't it so interesting? So something you just said, and something we were talking about before about like how would you feel if the people from your high school read your most vulnerable words? So it's so funny. 2 days ago, on that low-rise pants story, the little sister of one of my best friends from middle school to high school DMs me so randomly. Like it was one of those people that like, I love her, but I kind of forgot that she existed because I have not seen her name. And I'm like, I see her name come across. She writes me this beautiful message. And I actually wasn't ready to read the whole thing. I only saw the first like 3 lines. So I don't really even know what it fully said. But the first like 3 lines were, I've always known you to be like the definition of female beauty. And it's shocking to me that you see yourself this way, ...
Wow.
And I was like, oh my gosh, because there's a lot at once. It was like, here's someone from middle school, high school. Here's someone that I didn't think was going to read this. Like when I post this stuff, these vulnerable words, I never say like my friend's little sister is going to read these words.
Just put it out there.
You just put it out there. And it's like her message, it was such an interesting moment because of course she wouldn't see that I'd be insecure about those things because I pretended not to be for decades.
Wow.
Decades.
Wow.
And so for me to like go on there and say something about that and say something about like anything to do with physical looks or body image or anything like that must have felt like, what?
Yeah.
So out of left field for someone like that. And also so out of left field for anyone who'd known me now.
And why won't you read it?
The message? Oh, Danny. Well, I have a little bit of a relationship with avoidance. And I think sometimes when a message is so, I can feel it right when I get it. It's supercharged with such emotions and such a melting pot of goodness, potential sadness, tears, joy, grief. I don't know what it's going to be.
Mm-hmm.
That I don't want to confront it. I have to basically have a warm up to clicking it.
Wow.
And this one's lasted a couple days.
Wow.
Yeah. I will read it.
But why do you letting it have such control over you?
Do you think it has control over me?
The fact that you're putting it off for 2 days says it does. Because you received a message from me saying are you down to push it back for an hour? and then you opened it and nothing happened, and you're like, yeah, that's fine.
You know what it is? It's funny enough, of course, goes back to allowing yourself to be seen in all states. I think what it might be for me is that if I don't feel ready to go to that vulnerable place, then I won't open it. I'll open it when in my very specific, scheduled, allotted time to be vulnerable.
Wow.
It's it'll come to me and it'll be like, okay, now is the time. I am prepared. But for whatever reason, I don't feel that way in all moments.
Wow.
And that probably indicates there's a fracturing of self, which I realize as I'm saying this.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
Because I'm growing and I'm getting better. But that instance, what we just talked about, getting a highly emotional, vulnerable message from someone and not opening it, happens a lot, if I'm being honest.
Wow.
Oh, yeah.
What are other situations where it does?
Strangely enough, like when people tell me how the walks have impacted them positively, like I think it's things that are so, like, I have so much of myself in it, that like reading those words, it like makes me emotional, like I kind of get emotional just thinking about it, and I think that maybe that message from my friend's sister was because I put so much of myself into the writing. It's like the ultimate act of being seen is somebody reading something like that or going on the walk and having an experience and feeling so overwhelmed that they want to share it with you. It's such a beautiful thing. It's like so sacred to me that it's like, for whatever reason, I don't feel that I deserve that in all moments. Maybe that's what it is. I'm figuring this out as we're talking.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's an example.
It's like you don't want to allow yourself the beauty of that moment or their appreciation? Or is it like a nervousness that they're going to criticize you?
No, not at all.
Wow.
I open criticism messages instantly.
Wow.
I have no problem like allowing those in.
Wow.
I have no problem. You've seen me be roasted in multiple forms. I have no problem being roasted or criticized.
It's the beauty.
Oh, absolutely. I think it's like understanding the impact that something I created is having on people positively is very overwhelming for me.
That's so fascinating.
It's like hard to accept it for whatever reason. I think that's why I also struggle with monetization. Because it comes from such an extension of heart that I'm not doing it to be applauded. I'm not doing it to be recognized.
So when you are, why wouldn't you appreciate it?
Because then it makes me feel like people think that's why I'm doing it. Maybe that's what it is.
But you're skipping a step. Like you're assuming that is the case.
Yeah.
It's like someone enjoys the podcast. I'm not like, no. I'm like, thank you. I put my heart and soul into it. Like, what's wrong with that? What's wrong with being appreciated for something that you appreciate?
That's a good question. What's interesting, what's coming to me right now is like I don't usually have a problem with this when it's in person.
Because it's immediate.
Oh,
you don't have a choice.
Because I'm present in it.
Yeah.
I'm present in the moment and I can feel their energy.
It's the texts that get you.
It's like when people reach out to me virtually and share their appreciation and like how certain elements have changed their life or like these very deep and vulnerable stories that are so meaningful to me. Like it's that would be like my life's work is to get messages like that every day. Like I'll never forget the first time I got a message like that off of something I created. When I was in college, I had this Humans of UF project I did. I went to the University of Florida, so that's what UF is. And I based on the Humans of New York project. And it was exactly like it. You just have profiles, pictures of strangers I go up to, and I sit with these people for like anywhere from 3 to 5 hours usually and just listen. And I know you can relate to this. It was a very one-sided conversation, which I loved. I love like holding space, just like you, of course. I love holding that space for people and then watching them like find themselves in their words and discover parts of them that they maybe have suppressed or not wanted to look at or didn't connect certain dots that were going to take them to the next level. And I would see that happen just in like a 3-5 hour conversation. It would be like, what else is like, this is life. Like, what else is worth living for? Right. I mean, it was just like so deeply exciting. Like, so the first soul nourishing thing I'd ever done. And why I'm bringing this up is because I did this story once. It was so unexpected. It was outside the journalism college. This was this guy on the bench. And I sat with him for like 4 hours and he opened up to me about his depression. And the way he described it was so beautiful and poetic. And there was so much visual imagery. And it was just so, like, I remember, this was my process. I would just record the conversation on my phone. And then I, like the whole 3-4 hours, And I'd go back and listen to it and like transcribe it, like by hand. But I would remember like how I felt hearing certain things, or I'd see the way that their face changed, or their expression, got really either really happy, you see a light in their eyes, or it's like they want to avoid and they kind of like turn inward and how to pay attention to these things. And I would know at what markers they would happen. Like that was the good stuff.
Did you write it down?
No, I just remembered.
Like the timestamp or just like the general sense?
I just have a very good memory for conversation. So I would just remember, I would know, I was like, okay, it's about this time. And then I'd like scrub through it and it'd be like almost on the money every time, where I'd be like, this is when he opened up about this. And I remember I was nervous about that story because it was so deeply personal, to put your face on the internet with that story, this open story about depression. I just like, it was such a beautiful act of courage to allow yourself to be seen that way. And I, back then, could never do that. Right. And like, here I am, like being a channel for other people to do that. And like, I love vulnerability so much in other people, but I'm suppressing it within myself. It's a very interesting time. But I put that story up. I got his permission because it was like a huge deal for me. And I got multiple messages off that story saying I was considering taking my own life. And then I read his story and like, this is what kept me on the earth.
Oh my God.
And I just don't feel like there's like, what else is worth it? The fact that I've gotten one message like that in my life is so beautiful. And it wasn't, obviously it was him too. It was his courage and bravery in sharing that. But to be like a vessel for that level of vulnerability was so special. And I think it's interesting because I look back on those moments. That moment specifically is so meaningful to me. Like I remember where I was. I was in the dining hall when I got that message, just on Facebook. And I was like, wow, like I'm 19 years old and I had an impact on someone like that. So anyway, I'm just saying that because...
Let me get you some.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I got Judy Miranda. No, I cried. Oh, by the way, for anyone's wondering, the only surgery I've ever had was tear duct surgery when I was an infant.
What?
So when I cry, it's like two majestic tears, like an old Western movie, like streaming down my face. So anyway.
Oh my God.
Very bad. Thank you. Thank you, Daniel.
Of course.
Okay. But anyway, when you have, I think like, when you have that level of impact on someone, have you ever gotten a message like that?
Not to that level.
Mm.
But what about that is, so when you relate that back to when you're receiving a kind message.
Yeah. Okay. So why I brought that story up is because I feel like so it actually, like, the reason I avoided it is for what just happened. So, like, it hits me so deeply that, like I feel so much and I'll just start bawling.
What's wrong with that?
Of course, nothing's wrong with that. Nothing's wrong with that. But, like, everyone hits me like that. I mean, that one was really, really special. And, like, it's time capsuled in my mind and in my memory. But like when someone comes to me through the walks and shares how the walks have changed their lives and changed how they show up, changed their social confidence, changed their routines, changed their connectedness and feelings of belonging. When I see that in written form, I'm almost like transported back to that moment in the dining hall where I got that message and I didn't know what I was going to open, and I opened it and I just lost it.
Wow.
Like, I just lost it in front of, like, I mean, it was like a quiet cry.
Yeah.
But it was so unexpected. And I think that there's like for whatever reason, that stays with me. It stays in my body, that moment of unexpected, like, burst of emotion and burst of, like, I created something that had this impact. And it's so beautiful, but it's also a little bit scary, you know?
Why?
It's scary to be seen in that way, I think, when I was in the dining hall and it was a very unexpected moment and then people were around. And I usually have those moments in my like very particularly scheduled times to cry, my crying hours. This was not one of them. And I think like it was very vulnerable for me to be seen like that. So then now when I'm going about my day and I get an unexpected message about the walks, I'm like, oh, am I ready for this? Can I allow myself to like see this?
If this message is, you saved my life by virtue of having these walks, can you
It just happened.
Right.
In person.
Yeah, in person it's easier to hold for some reason.
It is.
Why?
Because I can hold it. Like in person, if someone were to share something like that with me, I can show up for them and give them my 100% presence. I can give them my 100% fullness. I can like.
You can give
hug
them a hug.
I can hug them.
Versus if they're in their room writing it, you can't.
I can't like receive it in the fullness that I want to.
That makes sense, actually.
Does it?
Yeah.
Because this really resonates. Like what I just said actually really resonates. I've never clicked this before connect these dots, so thank you. Of course. But like I think if someone were to share something like that with you and you're not able to meet them there, meet them in the fullness of emotion that they express to you, virtually it's very hard for me.
Yeah.
I find it to be so difficult, easier these days as I started sharing my most vulnerable writings. But there was a period before that time where it was hard for me to feel like I could bring my full self online. Is anyone their full self? Is it possible? It's a different medium.
Yeah.
Is it even possible to be your full self?
Yeah.
Because wouldn't being your full self online mean that every single stream of consciousness thought you had would have to be up there, right? Because like you're showing a fracture of yourself or like a splinter.
But you're always sharing a fracture or splinter of yourself. Like by virtue of you choosing this sweater, that's a fracture of yourself. By virtue of you saying specific words, that's a fracture. You can't always be your full real self in all moments. Your full real self is a fracture of this moment and all the moments that came before it.
Okay. Touche. That's fair. That's fair. For whatever reason, though,
I understand where you're coming from.
When we're here, like imagine if we were having this conversation over text. First of all, would never happen because you give like 5-word text, and I give
full paragraphs.
I give mini novels, and Danny gives sounds good.
Wow.
The covenant of Danny Miranda. Wow. Like I know I sent a banger when I get that. That's actually my goalpost. Like I'm not doing like that. Wow, is so vital. It's amazing. But like, we cannot experience the fullness of this moment on another medium. I struggle with that. You know, I feel like I've gotten a lot better. I don't ever feel like we were talking about this the other day when it comes to authenticity in writing. The one thing I ask myself after I write something and I'm about to post, like right before I hit the send button, is like, does this feel authentic to me?
Mm.
And
it's a good test.
Right? I feel like if more people ask themselves that, especially on Twitter, it would be a very different platform.
I mean, I was speaking to someone this morning who was like, I said to him, I experience you right now and I experience your tweets and they're not connecting.
He said that to you?
I said that to him.
Really?
Yeah.
Can you share like what about it?
I felt the love coming from him, but I sensed he was putting people down in his tweets.
Really?
Yeah. And I was like, there's a disconnect there. And he's like, wow. I've never considered that. And the only reason I could point it out was because I had seen it in my own behavior in the past, like in 2018.
Really?
Yeah.
In your tweets specifically?
Yeah. And I was like tweeting based on other people's, what I thought other people would want to hear and unconsciously. And so I reflected that to him and he was like, whoa, that's true. And I didn't see that.
So when you say like the content of the tweets, it's so interesting. There's like so many different worlds within Twitter.
Yes.
You have like the people who are clearly trying to make a buck, and God bless them. I mean, I get it. We gotta make some cash money sometimes. I get it. But also, that's a very specific flavor of Twitter. That's like content system. This is a scheduled tweet that I scheduled at 2:24 to throw people off, but it's definitely scheduled. Like that's that side of Twitter. But then you have like the more like philosophical side of Twitter. That's very big on like it's almost like vulnerable sharing of ideas, which we've talked about before. Like somebody will share like, what does it mean to play? What does it mean to be of elevated consciousness? What does it mean to be a people pleaser? All of these types of things, like an exploration of ideas. You know, that side of Twitter is actually probably my favorite that I found. It feels like the freest and most experimental expression of self.
It's closest to your writing, it feels like.
Closest, right. Like not totally on par as we talked about, but like closest. I totally agree.
Yeah.
And then you kind of have this like side of Twitter, how would I describe this? That wants to be like the other sides.
Okay.
Like it doesn't have its own identity. So it's trying to find it. Like I think this guy you met might fall on that side where it's like, I see what's working. I see what other people are writing and posting. And now how can I bend myself and be a contortion artist on this platform to replicate what's working?
The difficult part is when it's unconscious.
And I think most of that part of Twitter is.
Yeah.
Like I can feel it when I see it. I mean, it's so interesting. And this is with no judgment. This is just truly, because I've done it, you've done it.
Definitely.
You know, having those periods where you're wanting, you have something to say, right? Like you think deeply, you're like, oh, this is an interesting thought, but it's probably like something that you had seen a couple days ago. It's just like, just not starting to click. And now you want to write about it. But it's like, you can tell when someone's words are coming from them or when it's coming from a combination of other people's words.
Yeah. Well, I think when it's coming from other people's words, it's just like more recognizable. Like, you know, the sources.
Yeah.
You know, like
you can see it.
Yeah. Versus when it's coming from a unique place, you just don't know the sources. Like it's the same thing that's happening, but the sources are different to get to those inputs. And maybe it is a truly unique experience that only you have experienced, which might be the unique source that you can't recognize. But it's just like the recognition of sources.
Interesting.
Which is why writing about your own experiences is so valuable. Because that's the only viewpoint you've ever experienced. And no one else has had that coffee this morning with that person that I just mentioned, right? Yeah. And similar, you write about your experiences, like that situation with going to the gym and having that shirt, right? Yeah. Like that is your unique experience that no one else has had exactly like that. But many people can relate to and be like, oh, I
can see themselves in it.
Yeah. And that's what hits people deeply.
Why do you think that more people don't write that way?
It's vulnerable. It's hard. I don't know if it's hard, but it's vulnerable. You need to have awareness of yourself, and you need to be willing to put yourself out there, and you need to be comfortable with the criticism and sit with yourself in it. And it's very free. You know, like when I wrote about being starstruck, it's just like, that was a weight that I didn't even know I was carrying, you know?
Did it feel like that?
Yeah.
When you put it out there?
Absolutely. I'm just like, oh, I don't have any, there's no charge here. There's no charge to this situation. There's no charge to anything. And I like using that phrasing from you has been very helpful.
About neutrality? And
charge? Just charge in general. But I guess neutrality is related to it. But just charge, because you can see like what triggers you or what upsets you or what like you're angry about. That's like the charge that's going on. Yeah. Or what you're trying to hide is like your charge, or what message you won't open. Right? There's a charge there to that message. And just having that as a frame of reference has been so helpful to me.
Oh, I'm so glad.
Thank you.
Oh, that's amazing. It's a great way to look at it. Because it's like wherever there's a charge means there's work to be done.
It's a place you're not free.
Absolutely.
To quote Peter Crumb.
Absolutely. Do you have any of those places these days?
Not that I'm aware which allows me to be very free.
Wow.
In every moment.
That's beautiful.
And I'm open to experiencing the places where I'm not free, and I look forward to them. But this is what I wanted to but this is what I wanted to thank you about, because like you helped unblock some of those places in a tremendous way that I didn't even, I'm blown away that, you know, we could speak on the phone for 3 hours. I could reflect on some things. I could look at my life by virtue of you commenting on it, or you're like looking at me in a way that is helpful to me and helping me grow. And I've never met someone who is capable of seeing me and also holding space for me to grow like you have. And it really,
that's so sweet.
And it's great that I didn't type this message out because you wouldn't read it.
It's alright. If you want text from you, I would know.
But it's really so true. And I've noticed myself understand who I am in every moment by virtue of your reflections.
Wow.
Like, and your eyes are flushing. That's great. No, and I really appreciate that, you know, and I really, like, you gave me the gift of understanding that wherever I am is the gift.
Wow.
And the reason why these podcasts, in my opinion, have been better over the last month, but less researched, is because I'm more myself, and I'm not using the research that I've done to help me like fill in the details of my own personality. Like, what if I'm just enough?
Wow.
Right? And that understanding has given me so much power. And it's the work you've done. It's the work Talia's done with me. It's the work that Jackson Sullivan's done. Like, all of it. Life has become my teacher, and you have been one of the most important teachers in my life. So thank you for being you.
Wow. Yay. That is like a profoundly impactful compliment. Like, I'm speechless. Which doesn't happen often. You know, I have a lot to say. I have many words. Wow. The first thing that comes to my mind, well, so many. I think there's so much to be, oh my gosh. There's so much to be learned and shared from your growth over the last month, and my growth, but like your growth specifically. Like, you were on like just those last couple percentage points from greatness, like of freedom. Of freedom. Total freedom.
Yeah.
And like the greatness, what I mean by that, just to be specific, is like you being completely free in yourself in all moments. That's greatness to me.
Yes.
Like, that's you at your greatest. Is when you are like, however I am in this moment is enough. I trust myself to show up and just sit and hold space for this person, because that is my gift. Like, that is you, right? And I feel like over the last month, some of our like puzzle pieces, the conversations we've had, put that together. And I wonder, like, and this is really just for anybody who might be on those percentage points away from total freedom.
Yeah.
Like, what stands out to you as being like the insight that moved the needle, that like nudged you forward? What do you remember?
It was really sitting with, what am I uncomfortable with? What am I running from? Or what do I not want to look at? And actually sitting with it and realizing that it wasn't a big deal at all. It was like my relationship with my dad. It was like, coming from money.
Yeah.
Like, that was not something I could ever say on a podcast before. That was not something I could admit to myself. Because I felt like, who's gonna appreciate me if I make money in the future and I come from money? No one's gonna value what I say. But when you realize, like, oh, that's just giving someone else power. That's just not giving yourself power in this moment to be you. I was like, oh, it's not a big deal at all. And like, people can think that it's a big deal, and that's a reflection of them and how they view the world. Right? And so I really just started to chip away. And by chip away, I just look at like the places that I didn't want to look at. And then realize that they weren't a big deal at all. You know? And it's why I see the greatness in everyone. Because to the best of my abilities, I look at them as though they were completely free.
Oh, that's interesting. You're looking at other people as, I believe in this moment you're completely free.
Yes. Because your situation with your pants has no charge to me.
Yeah.
Right? You're blocked by that. Or the situation with the message, right? Like that means nothing to me to look at it or not look at it.
Yeah.
And I know you're capable of looking at it. And so, and you going from Instagram stories to Twitter, I know that means absolutely nothing to me.
Yeah.
But it means the world to you of like, I need to like not show myself fully. And like, but I see you just as like an open hand, open heart, you know, and I know you're capable of overcoming that. So I'm looking at people like they're free and just pointing out the places where I think they might not be and then letting them sit with that.
Ooh. Wow.
What comes up for you when I say that?
Well, it comes up is that it's true. Because if you look, let's use me as an example. Since you really stepped into you in a big way. Like, I'll never forget when we had that one phone call. It was something 11 in the morning. And it was just like, hello. And do you remember the context? You know my weird memory.
Oh, you know.
So I had texted you so randomly at like midnight on a Saturday. I was like, I have an idea for you. And it was such a small idea. But I had said this, and then you come back, you reply to your own message, and you like emphasize reacted it. And I was like, dang, this man really. So then I come back, and I'm like, all right, 5-minute phone call. Then we get on there 3 hours later. I didn't have to give that context because it's like, it was so unexpected. Like, that conversation was so important.
Yeah.
But we did not plan that.
Yeah. And what happened when we talked about it?
We talked about, oh my gosh, okay. We talked about how your medium was not audio.
Yeah.
And I remember the moment because you listed out you and the growth hackers. I love them. They don't even know I exist, but like, I love those guys. And you were like, this is his medium, this is his medium,
yeah.
I'm audio. I just remember how I felt hearing you say that.
Yeah.
It just felt so wrong. I was like, Danny's audio?
Yeah.
No. That's like doing you such an injustice. It was just like, it hit me immediately. And I can remember, this is why it was so significant for me. The same moment that you had with Hermosi, or with Priscilla.
Yeah.
8 minutes in.
Yeah.
I had in this moment I'm talking about. Because I challenged you.
Yeah.
This was a big deal for me at the time.
Because you viewed me on a pedestal.
Because I had put you on a pedestal for the audiences. Because we have to bring you, I kind of forget that we're recording this, but just for everyone's knowledge, basically, what happened was, this is like actually pretty amazing. Okay. What happened was, when I met Daniel Miranda months ago in March of this year, I saw through his actions and the way that he was showing up that he had such unconditional love for everybody that he was meeting. And he had really strong boundaries, which was a combination that I had never seen in the way that you do it. And just instantly I was like, oh my gosh, like this guy has figured it out. Like I just elevated Danny to this level above me, almost as if he was like a guru of sorts. It sounds ridiculous, but I'll go there. Yeah. Like if he felt like a guru to me. And because of that, I defaulted to only showing Danny a more spiritual side of me, a more intellectual side of me, because I wanted to give him the value that he was giving me by existing. And so, and by the way, we discovered this like 3 weeks ago. So this isn't like oh yeah, this happened months ago. Like this is really recent. And we talked about it very openly on walk for like, gosh, that was probably 6 hours. So this is just letting you in to the dynamic, which I think is fun. Right?
Definitely.
Okay.
Definitely.
Is there anything you don't want me to?
Absolutely.
Oh yeah,
free,
you're free. Okay, you're fully free. Oh,
I'm fully free.
Why am I asking you that? I'm hilarious. So with that context, this moment in this conversation I had on the phone with Danny, which happened before what I just told you, before I realized I put him on a pedestal, that I wasn't acting neutrally towards him, I wasn't showing up as my full self, I was giving him a very spiritual, intellectual side to me and nothing more. And when I was on this phone call with him, it was the first moment that I felt like I really challenged the content of what you said in a way that was meaningful. Because I've done it in small ways, safe ways, ways that were like, oh, like this isn't going to make a material difference to the conversation.
Right.
Like it might move it in a different direction, but it's not a challenge.
Right.
It's not a direct like.
Challenge
I disagree. I know. I was like, because I remember I got like right before I said it. I'll never forget. I have a full memory for it. I'm like sitting there and I'm like standing at the fridge, about to grab a drink, and I'm like, do I say it? I was in there, and I was like, I'm gonna go for it.
Wow.
Like send it.
Wow.
Let it rip. So then I was like, I don't think your life is audio at all. Or your life.
Yeah, your
I don't
video.
think your media is audio at all. It's live.
Yeah.
And I remember do you remember how you reacted?
I think I was standing right here and I just paused.
Oh yeah, you did. For a long time.
Really?
Yeah. It was like maybe 45 seconds.
What?
It was long.
A David Perel?
It was a what's the central question of your life pause.
Wow.
That's what it was.
Yeah.
It was
Because it really was true.
because it was so, and I had realized in that moment where you had boxed yourself in
Yes.
with those words.
Yes.
When you said, like, my medium is audio.
Yeah.
Like that in a weird way, like kept you in a cage.
Yes. It definitely did. And it didn't allow me to realize my gifts in every moment.
Yes.
Where I would just be talking to someone on the street and now it's like, this guy's crying from talking to me. Like, I just met this man, but it's because I allowed myself and opened myself up to the gifts, which speaks to your ability to like recognize that and say that, and having the courage to say that to someone you really respected in that moment is no small feat. So how do you do that?
How did I actually have the courage to do that? It's where I didn't feel free.
Yeah.
That's what it was.
Yeah.
It's like I think I had multiple moments like that with you. Like our dynamic now, I don't hold anything back. But like I was holding so much back. I mean, actually, this would be an interesting reflection. Do you feel that I'm different over the last couple of weeks?
No.
You don't?
No.
I feel so different.
I'm so happy to hear that.
Wait, tell me more. There's no difference in how I'm showing up.
No, not to me. I don't feel a difference.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Wow. Really?
Yeah. And this is,
wow.
I mean, like, this is what I mean where it holds no charge. Like how you're acting now versus then. I could be missing things, of course.
I'll reframe.
Yeah.
Is the version of me that you are talking to right now freer?
Yes.
See, that's what I was. That's where I was going.
Definitely freer. Are you kidding?
Yeah.
Like in your own body and mind?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So that's interesting.
Yeah. But you're not showing up any differently.
That's actually very comforting because I don't feel like I wasn't being inauthentic.
Yeah.
With you.
Yeah.
There was no part of inauthenticity. It was just I was showing you what I was comfortable with you seeing.
Yes.
That's what I was showing you.
Yeah.
I was showing you what felt safe. Like this is the safest versions of my personality. I was actually like writing something this morning about this. The connection between mind and body is so fascinating. Because I feel like the best way I could describe the relationship between my mind and my body for many years, up until like maybe this year, is that they were frenemies.
What way?
It's like my mind would say, like, okay, actually, I'll reverse it. Let's say I'm in a conversation I don't want to be in. And you get that feeling, that distinct moment where you're like, oh,
yeah.
And it's like, it's so visceral.
Yeah.
Like you know that feeling.
Life is about following that feeling.
I know. And this is what I mean by frenemies. It's like you feel it so strongly, and then the mind says, that's rude.
Yeah, you're supposed to be.
The mind says, listen, just a couple more minutes. Or, this would be uncouth. Or, and it comes up, it spins all of these stories.
Yes.
And then what you do is you betray the body intelligence. You betray the voice.
Yes.
And then the longer and more frequently you betray the voice, you get stuck in this pattern of like betrayal, self-betrayal. You're literally betraying yourself. And that's where it was like the body would tell me to do something and I wouldn't listen because the mind would convince the body out of it. So they would like bicker. Literally, I could feel this. This is what it felt like.
It's dis-ease.
Yeah, literally, disease. And you're experiencing this and you're like, and then the mind would always win until this year.
Oh, wow.
Like for decades of my life, it'd be like the mind would overpower the body. And then because it was overpowering the body so frequently, the body stopped talking as loudly. I think that happens to a lot of people.
What was the shift?
How did I shift to honoring my body's voice higher than my mind's?
Yeah.
Oh gosh, giving it a chance to be heard in silence. Huge. I mean, so many of my routines, and I'm about to take on a new one, which is just straight up run-of-the-mill garden variety meditation. Thank you to Danny. We had this funny moment the other day. I'll tell the people, because why not? We were watching our friend Talia record this amazing course she was doing, and beforehand we had this little funny moment where Danny and Talia were talking about meditation, and Talia had like done meditation for the first time ever. And she's like, "Oh my gosh, it was so amazing!" She's like going on and on, like this man over here like meditates like an hour a day, like just for funsies. And you're doing an hour still? 30 minutes?
No, I did 45 minutes last night.
Beautiful.
Just whatever it is.
Whatever the wind calls for.
Yeah.
So we're like having this amazing moment. I'm listening to two of these guys like talk about meditation, and then I kind of like think to myself, they don't know I don't meditate. It's like that meme of like the guy sitting in the corner of the party. Like they don't know that I don't do it. That was me. And then I come out and I say like, when I start meditating, it's over for you hoes. And Danny got me a timer. I'm gonna try. But like, that's my final video game boss.
Yeah. Why are you so resistant to it?
Because movement makes meditation safer for me.
Okay.
A lot of my meditation practices are mindful walking. I'll walk around, not only just like in nature, but another one that I do is talking meditation, and that one's very effective for me. Closer to straight up sitting with your thoughts, but talking meditation, I walk around as well. So like meditation, like sitting with those thoughts feels safer to me when I'm in motion.
That makes sense.
The irony is that like there's a fear around stillness. It's not ironic. And I can see it. As I'm talking, I'm like, okay, well, that's interesting. It's like, why do I always have to be moving?
Yeah.
And I do, up until maybe my next chapter, which is right now, that like, what would it be like to just sit?
Yeah.
Sit like you do.
Yeah. Well, I think like for you, and it's so clear from your writing as well, that your entire life is a meditation and you're constantly looking at things and reflecting on them and trying to understand the meaning and trying to understand the purpose and really tap into what is this person saying and why are they saying it and what's going on and what's the subtext
That's so true.
and what does this mean about me? What does this mean about my life? That's what meditation is.
Yeah.
But it's like, if you're not free to just sit on a couch for 20 minutes by yourself, you're not free.
It's true.
Right?
It's very true.
So even though you do so many of the meditative acts, and I feel like you almost, like for a lot of people, it's meditate first and then bring their life into the meditation. You made your life the meditation and now you're going to go to the, hopefully just sitting. And which is a fascinating paradox of, I don't think most people go that route.
Really?
Yeah, think about it. Like your life is way more of a meditation than most people's lives. And that is amazing, but it's like, what about the actual practice of it? And how could that benefit you, especially if you're not willing to go there?
That's a very interesting reflection. Thank you for that reflection around life being a meditation, because it's always been a curiosity of mine why I struggle to sit with my thoughts the way that you can. It's interesting because I'm able to do it in, like I said, safer ways. Like I get so much value out of tuning into my own radio channel, you know, so much value. And like you ask, how did you start to prioritize the voice of the body over the mind? It was that. Like I would say, if you're somebody watching this right now who struggles with having your mind be so loud that you can't even hear your body. Like if us saying like, listen to the voice doesn't, like, you don't know what that is. Like, what is that voice? Or maybe you can't hear it. It's just because it's been tuned out. So like the way, like almost like meditation light would be go on walks without headphones.
Yes.
For as long as you can. I remember I told Talia to do this maybe 3 months ago. And she knew the first time she walked without headphones, she cried.
What?
It's unbelievable how like, and I know I'm talking to meditation master over here, but like.
Not a master. I'm just a guy.
Oh yeah, we're just here. But you are so much further than me in this area that it's like, oh, wow, it's impressive. Like that's why I say that.
Yeah, but it's just like looking at someone who's run marathons and being like, that's impressive. You know, it is impressive, but there's like a very objective path to get there that you're scared of or unwilling to do.
That's actually a really good reflection. That is a good message for anyone who feels like they can't hear that voice, or if they're very stuck in their head. It would be like, you just kind of have to take that first step. And if you have never tried going on a solo walk with no headphones, no sound, no stimuli, somewhere in nature, then try it. I would say that is like what put me on the path to listening to my body so clearly to the point where I'm like somewhat even getting visions now.
Wow.
Like it is a very powerful connection. And like I honor the body so much more than I have like now that I've seen both sides of the coin. I lived for like decades, not that many decades, like what are you? What? My multiple decades of life, but anyway. I lived in a couple of years of my life, at least a decade.
Just a couple.
Just a couple. I was like, damn, I really aged myself unnecessarily there. Okay, sorry. Okay, anyway.
It's okay.
But I lived the life of honoring the mind's voice. And like, that's a very hard life. Yes. Like if I were to compare with life when you honor the mind's voice over life where you're honoring the body's voice, if I were to compare and contrast those two lives, infinitely more peace, fulfillment, contentment, and self-trust listening to the body's voice. It's not even close. And like, I know you've experienced both of these versions of lives, right?
Of course.
So do you find that what I'm saying is true?
Absolutely. And I would say that, you know, when you integrate the body and the mind, it's almost like the soul. Yeah. Right? That's how it feels for me. It's like operating from your highest soul. In some sense, is the best way I could put it. But, you know, when I was thinking about this and talking, I was like, I wonder when the first moment was that Elle really trusted herself in her, just like in her being, to just surrender to what happened. Because when you're operating from the mind all the time, you're like creating these scenarios and then going back and forth. But like to just trust yourself is different. So is there a moment that stands out for you?
Oh, what a good question. I think the through line to what you just said is like the mind gives you an illusion of control. You're never in control. And this was liberating for me. Like you think you're in control, right? You can control certain inputs. You can't control everything. Like I think one of my like gifts, which is also a curse in some ways, is that I have a very creative mind, very imaginative. And I can come up with like theories A through Z of a possible outcome. Yeah. But just because you can doesn't mean you should. Hmm. And like that has been my journey. Is like I know what it was like to game out so far ahead. But what you're not considering is that every small action creates a different route. So if you're sitting there and you're dedicating a precious mental resource to coming up with strategies A through Z, you're not considering the fact that your next move,
when you go to C, it's different to D that you could possibly never.
you could never plot it out that far. Like you just could never. That was liberating.
So if you know that to be true, then you just have to relax and trust.
But also, like the way that you get out of thought patterns is by doing. That's what I've learned. Is that if you're an overthinker, go out and do one of the things you're thinking about. One of them. Just like take some kind of action. Yeah. Choose whatever feels right to you in the moment and don't let yourself go past D. Like do not go to E, F, G. Do not. Because like you are wasting so much time, so much energy, so many mental resources predicting a future that you cannot control. Because what if you were to take the very next step and then someone were to reach out to you and completely derail, which happens all the time. You're not allowing space for the magic. Like the magic is in the unplanned, right? And so if you're sitting there wanting to plan out everything, then what you just have blinders on to what's in front of you, there's no presence in that. There's no capitalization of the moment in that. Like that's the difference. Like when you interview people, and I know that you're right here with me, versus somebody who'd be interviewing me and had a list of questions and be like looking down, and people know when this is happening. Like they're looking down, they're like, oh, that's the next question. Okay. And then it's like they're totally not in it. They're halfway in it and halfway out. That's what you get when you don't trust yourself. Yeah. It actually comes full circle what you were saying about your interview prep and how that's changed in your research. Because it's a trust.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
So what was the first moment for you?
Oh, yeah. You know me. I get like a thought, you like spark something in me, I gotta go for it. Okay. The first moment that I trusted myself?
Yeah.
Ooh, that's such a good question. Okay, I can trace it back, actually. This was the most meaningful one that I've been thinking about a lot lately because I'm about to do the same exact thing again. I'm about to experience the feeling again. It was that project I told you about, the Humans of UF profile series. I remember I was so self-conscious. I had plotted out A through Z right before I published that because there were so many different things running through my mind. First, I did not know how to take photos. I had no training. And I didn't even have a camera. I went to Costco and bought a Canon PowerShot in like a little kit. And I just was walking around and I felt like such an imposter because here's this big project that meant so much to me that I wanted to do justice. And here I am, an 18-year-old kid walking around campus. And I'm like, I know that I can interview people. Like, I'm so confident in that. That's what I've always been good at. But everything else was like a bunch of question marks, a bunch of insecurity that I almost like talked myself out of it. Like that was the mind. If I had listened to the mind, I never would have published that project. And I never would have gotten that message I told you about. That was like so life-changing for me. And so that in that moment when I hit publish on that project, which was at like noon on a random Wednesday, and I allowed my body to just guide, where I was like, you know what? You've set up 15 stories in advance of publishing so that people have a good idea of what they're going to get. You've put as much as you can into it. You did the best you could with the resources you had at the time. Your photos will get better. Your interviews will get better. But you've done this work and it should be seen. And even if only my mom liked the page, then it should still be seen by my mom. And like, who am I to deprive the world of the work? Even if no one values it, it should still be published. So I had this profound moment with my 18-year-old self. And I was like, okay, publish. I hit publish on the Facebook page. And I went to a class that was 2 hours long. And I walked to campus. This specific teacher was really particular about no phones in class. So I turned my phone off. I got back online, and there's 12,000 likes on the page.
What?
Yeah. In that 2 hour span.
And this was the first post you did?
I had published the page with 15 stories on it so people knew what to expect. I had thought about this so deeply. I even thought about like the user experience of like if someone just sees one story, they're going to want to understand what it is, and they're going to go to the page, and then they're going to see all the other ones, and then they're going to know. And then they're going to like it. I thought that far ahead. This is what I'm saying.
It got 12,000 likes in the first hour?
In like 2 hours.
Oh my God.
It sensation. USA Today wrote a piece about it. I met the creator, Brandon Stanton. Like, it was a huge hit. It was one of the first college campus spinoffs of that project. And I almost didn't have any of that if I hadn't listened to the body voice. So it was in that moment, even though I was trying to talk myself out of it actively by saying all of these stories, your photos aren't good enough. What if your interviews aren't good enough? What if everybody hates it? What if people make fun of you? All this stuff. All of that was going through my mind. And I was just like, you know what? What if everyone loves it? What if my pictures are great? What if my stories are amazing and deserve to be read? Like, what if you were to flip all of those negatives into a positive? That's what I did. And I hit publish. And then it ended up being like one of the things to this day I'm most proud of creating in my life.
Wow.
So that was probably the first moment that I can like truly, truly recall where I overrode the mind's voice.
Wow.
They were both really loud, like screaming. Like, I will never forget how it felt. My heart was racing, like beating through my chest. Like, before I published this thing, I was so nervous. It was crazy. And you know why I'm saying this? Because I know, which is why I'm avoiding it, that it will feel the same way when I publish my first profile of people who come on walks.
Wow.
Yeah, I just know. Like, that's why I have dragged my feet on it.
Yeah.
You know? Because there's magic in that work. Like, it really, I know. I just have a knowing about these things. Like, I know how much heart that I put into that work years ago. It means so much more to me now because these are people like those. There's God in everyone, right? Like, as Ram Dass says, every stranger is just God in drag. And I truly believe that and I live that. But back then, those were people I had no connection to that I was going up to on campus. And it meant the world to me. With the walks, these are people I see a lot. It means like even more to me to get it right because I care about them so much. So when I do that first profile, which is actually going to be Talia,
wow,
I just know what it's going to feel like. Like, I know how much I'm going to care about getting it right. And I'm going to just obsess over it. And like, I'm going to give it everything I have every time.
How do you know when it's ready to go?
How do I know that it's ready to go? That's such a good question. I think it's going into my heart, right when you said it, was like, when my heart starts racing, like, I know it's going to feel the same. Like, I'm going to know when I have it. Because, like, I remember how it felt years ago when I did that back in 2013. I remember how I felt when I felt like I cared. I put everything I could into it, every last drop of my care, my heart, my energy. Like, I know what that feels like for me. You know?
Yeah.
So it's like that moment, like, basically it's me saying, I trust myself. And also, this is such a big deal to me and the people receiving this. It's not going to be a fraction of the same deal to these people as it is to me.
Right.
Just like you said.
The charge.
There's no charge. You're just receiving, right?
Yeah.
But like, I know that when I put my full self into it, like I give it everything I've got. When I give that much of myself to a piece of work or something I create, it always hits. It's a little scary though. That's why I'm avoiding it. So I'm like, am I ready for that? Like, it's a different way of being seen. Like we talked about in the beginning. It's like me sharing that work because there's so much love in it. I'm going to do it the same exact way I did, even though we have AI now and I could probably have a transcriber service transcribe. Like, I'm going to do it in the way that feels right to me, which is recording a long conversation and then going back and intuitively feeling what part needs to be shared. And I'm going to do it the same exact way. And maybe it's not going to have an impact at all, but I really do feel that these profiles are going to be the thing that's going to clarify the energy of the walks so profoundly that the right people will be magnetized to the experience the right hosts for different chapters will be magnetized to the experience. Like, it's going to be the linchpin.
Why are you so obsessed with the walks?
You're asking me this like an hour in, Danny? What? Okay. I can talk about this for too long.
It's always enough. It's always the right amount of time.
You're right. Why am I so obsessed with the walks? Okay. I'm just going to start with this. The walks are the community that I've always craved, but could never find for my whole life. Wow. Like, my entire life, I have loved having meaningful conversations just like this. Like, if I could just fill my days with this,
isn't it
which
great?
you do every day, living my dream, and your dream.
That's why
so
I'm the guru.
I know.
It's all making sense.
Oh my god, it's so true. And yeah, you're so right. Because we're very similar,
Yeah.
but you're going for it
Yes.
in a way that I haven't allowed myself to, and that's okay.
Yeah.
You know, I have acceptance.
Why not? Why haven't you allowed yourself to go for it? We can come back to the why you're obsessed with the walks.
Oh yeah. Oh man, I haven't allowed myself to go for it because I'm building my self-trust like brick by brick.
Yeah.
Like, every single one of these moments, and especially of the last month, like
Yeah.
October of this year, such a big month. I mean, like just using you and I, like the conversations that I had with you. So I'll let everybody into this. Gosh, I keep forgetting we're recording this. So, Danny we were on the phone. Danny gave me this feedback about my writing. And it was just so objective and just true. But there was something about the fact that Danny said it, that the message was made so much more intense because he was the messenger, because he was someone I had put on a pedestal. He was somebody who I didn't treat with a neutral charge. And so he basically told me, because I write about a bunch of different things. A lot of them are observational, or I like to even call it conversational poetry. So I'll be going about my life, and we like to say, I think you'd agree with me, like presence plus openness equals luck. Mm. And if you want to have a more lucky life, just be present and open to every moment. Like, if you could sit there in every moment of your life and say, what would the coolest version of me do in this moment? Like, what would the most interesting version of me do? What would the bravest version of me do? And you can just do that, your life will get so good. Like, that's what I do. I'm sure that's what you do.
Yeah.
In all moments.
Well, the presence requires you to uncover a lot of times the patterns that are holding you back.
Absolutely.
The places you're not free.
Absolutely.
Because presence comes from freedom.
Absolutely. And if you hesitate to be present, you have a roadmap to where you need to do work.
Yes.
So like, and this sounds very esoteric, so I'll give an example. Like, this is very small. Let's say you're standing in an elevator, and I'll tell the story. Oh my gosh. This just happened right before I got here. Let's say you're in an elevator, and just you and two other people there. You could do the least interesting thing, which is to say nothing. Or, like, that cool version of you, that interesting version of you could say something. Anything. Like, just to see where it goes. It's so fun. And, like, it's not always going to hit. You're going to fall flat sometimes. Or it could be incredible. So, like, if you can train your brain to say something because the off chance that it could be incredible might just happen, your life gets so good. So I'm in this elevator right before I get to Danny's. And there's this couple, a guy and a girl, and they have these two dogs. And the dog is wearing a little vest. And I just look at his dog and I laugh. And I'm like, oh man, your dog looks like a venture capitalist because it has like a little Patagonia vest. And they're laughing and they're like, oh my gosh, it's so funny. Nobody's ever said that before. And we're just like shooting the shit. And I'm like, what is that dog's name? I'm like, Dennis. Dennis? Like, I've never met a dog named Dennis. I've like barely met a person named Dennis. So it was this floor. We're all laughing. And then the other dog, who does not have a vest on, but is equally cute. I was like, what is that dog's name? And the guy goes, Randall. I'm like, Dennis and Randall.
Straight out of Greenwich, Connecticut.
That's what I'm saying. I was like I told you before, straight from the roster of baby boomer white guy names. I mean, it's named Dennis and Randall. So we're just having this amazing moment. And it was just like so soul nourishing to have like, what are the two options of that elevator? You have option A, which is I said nothing, and then we're all awkwardly standing there. Or option B, we're playing with life.
Yes.
Like we are present and we are open.
Yes.
And we say something that is like, it sparks the fire. It's like a catalyst to fun, joy, play, and adventure. Like now I get to have a fun story when I show up to Danny's and I'm like, I have dog hair on my leggings because I met Dennis and Randall.
Yes.
That's fun. That's just a fun way to live.
And it's so much more joyful, and you can create that in every moment.
Oh,
you
absolutely.
know, and something I like to ask on the elevator is like, what's the best thing that's happened to you in the last 24 hours? And it's just like, I could ask, how are you doing? Right? But what's the best thing that happened to you in the past 24 hours? Sparks a different pathway in your mind.
Totally.
Right? And it's like, spark different pathways in people's minds.
Yeah.
So that they could experience life in a slightly different way than they typically do.
Or the pattern disrupt.
Yeah. Be the pattern disruptor.
Be the pattern disrupt.
That's
That's a
good.
good one.
That's good.
Ooh.
So back to, I gave you the feedback on the phone.
Oh, yeah. So like I was saying, I go in like first.
Well,
Danny focuses me. Okay.
that's the meditation.
I know. See, that's why I need it desperately. Okay, so I write about a bunch of different things. Very observational writing. Like, for example, the elevator story, I could write about that. Like, I make lessons out of everything that I experience, and I experience a lot because we're present and open. So some of my writing is on romantic love. And it comes in unexpected ways because I am not in a relationship, but I love all forms, and romantic love is just so fun for me. Like I have all these moments that seem to be magnetized to me where like couples will appear right near me and they'll like do this almost movie scene level of like action towards each other. I can't help but write about it. I can't help myself. I have to write about it. So there was a period of time where I was sharing these romantic writings, and Danny and I are on the phone, and it just so happened that the writing of that day was that I was in Chipotle, and this guy who comes on walks in Chipotle, and he comes right up to me. By the way, he said to tell you, he said hi.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hello.
He comes right up to me, and I don't know this guy that well at this point. We're friends now, but he's like, how did you find your life's purpose? And I was like, pattern disrupt.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
I was like, brilliant. Because if he just said, hey, how are you? I would have been so bored. I was so bored. So he said that, and I'm like, now we're cooking. We're cooking with gas
This is
now.
real
Come
stuff.
on now. So then I go in and launch into that. And he already has his life's purpose, which was so ironic because he just wanted to know. He was just curious. And because he'd opened that way, I was so overly receptive to him. I was like, I'm locked in. I'm sold. Like, that sold me. Yet another reason to be the pattern disrupt, because it really does like
Soul.
stick with people.
SOUL.
Like my car. Oh yeah. Oh
That's
yeah.
good. Okay.
We love it. So one of the things that he builds to, like maybe 30 minutes into this conversation, is he's like, do you want romantic love in your life? He asked me this. It's like, what an interesting question. It's like the most delicate way of asking someone, why are you single, that I've ever heard. And I was like, wow. So I like answer, and I'm like, yeah, of course I do. And why do you ask? Like, what? I think I specifically said, what inspired the question? And I threw back on him because you know me. And he's like, well, it's interesting. Me and my girlfriend just are confused as to why you're single. And we just think you're so wonderful. And I'm like, this isn't me, humble brag. This guy does exist, and like I can link him. It's like I didn't make this up. So anyway, like I was saying this out loud, and I'm like, this sounds crazy. So anyway, okay, I'm sorry. This really didn't happen. Didn't happen.
It's okay.
There's a point to this. So he like, goes on this tear about like, oh, you're so wonderful, and like we think you should use someone, and we're very interested to see who you date because it'll be an endorsement of them. What an interesting idea. So he says this to me. I never heard someone say something like that before. So I wrote about it. Because like that's what I do when something sticks out to me. A lot of my writing is like, I'll have a conversation with someone, and if 2 hours later I'm still thinking about one thing they said, I need to write about it because writing is reflection for me. And it's like that helps me make sense of it. And when I make sense of it, I want to share my making sense with the world. So I put this out there, and then a couple hours later, I'm on the phone with this guy.
This guy being me.
This guy, Daniel. And we're talking on the phone. And you bring it up. You're like, tell me what happened at Chipotle today. And at this time, just for the record, this is before our Renaissance, where I took Danny off the pedestal. He was still up there. This was actually right before we took him down. And he's like, tell me about Chipotle. And at this point, audience, please remember, I was not sharing any of my other selves with Danny. He was only seeing the spiritual, intellectual side. So he was seeing writings online about love from me, but we'd never talked about it.
Constantly. Like, you've written about love, like, I don't know, 4 or 5 other times that I...
And you're like, who is this?
Well, you never presented any of that information to me while we were talking. And we'd spent tens of hours together.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, okay, like, there's some incongruency there.
Like, who is this? Yeah. Which is so interesting. So when he brings this up on the phone, and he's like, tell me what happened at Chipotle, I was like, I remember, because I was supposed to go to an event. Remember?
Yeah.
I was supposed to go to an event. I was like, oh, we can only talk on the phone for like 20 minutes and stuff. And we were like, and I knew there was something important, so I like skipped the event. I'm like in the parking lot. I remember when you asked me that, I like panicked.
It was the same feeling that you get when you look at the message.
Yes! It was the same feeling. It was just this embodied feeling of like, oh shit.
Yeah.
And so we ended up talking about it. And something came over me. I was feeling brave. Just these like 20 seconds of insane courage, maybe even less, maybe 10 seconds. Where I was like, why do you think I'm single?
Yeah, that must have been a difficult question.
So hard. And for the version of me when I asked that, that was a very big question for me.
Yeah.
Like, that was like peak vulnerability, because I had, first of all, we never talked about anything like that before.
Yeah.
Like, at all.
Yeah.
And then second of all, for me to have opened myself up to your thoughts when I saw you as above me, like, I was like vulnerable in multiple ways.
Yeah.
Because part of putting someone on a pedestal, at least for me, means that you don't want them to see you as anything but perfect, because you see them as perfect. So when you're operating as a mirror for someone on a pedestal, there's so much pressure on the relationship. Yeah. Because you see like, the person is perfect when they're not, and they don't even want to be seen that way.
Yeah.
That's where the charge is non-neutral, and it ends up disrupting the experience, like you with Peter Crumb.
Yep.
Right?
Absolutely.
Because if there's any non-neutral charge, positive or negative, that person's not going to show you their full authentic self, because they don't feel comfortable to be it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes, absolutely.
So I remember in that moment, when I had asked you for your opinion, it felt so different to me because I never invited your criticism of me in that way.
Yeah.
And I'd like, for the first time, invited it.
Yeah. Well, you didn't know it was going to be criticism, and it didn't have to be criticism. I could have easily said, there's no reason for you to be single.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Which
maybe is what you were hoping I would say in some aspect. I don't know. I don't know what you were imagining, but it's funny that, like, looking back, you're like, it was invited criticism. But in the moment, were you actually inviting criticism?
In the moment. I genuinely had no idea what you were going to say. There was something about it that was fun.
Yeah.
But it was also very scary. Yeah. But it was like, I really wonder what Danny, I do not know what Danny would say. How interesting. And so I just like pulled the thread, and then I fucked around and found out. And I got real upset.
What happened? Tell me how you took
I got real upset. Okay. So there was that first question, like the why do you think that I'm single? That actually wasn't the one that did it. Mm. That one, because you were just like, well, you reflected that one back to me real fast. You were like, well, why do you think you are? Mm. And then we went on that route. But then I asked you about what you felt in my writing, because you brought my writing up to me. Mm. And then you were like, well, I feel through your writing a sense of lack. That's what hurt me really bad. It was that part of it. Because what you did there, it's so interesting to think about. Because you were on a pedestal, I had prioritized your truth over mine. I trusted your view over mine. So when I'm hearing you speak and hearing you say, I feel lack in your words about romantic love, it almost like upended my worldview, because I was like, oh my gosh, I do not feel that I've been writing from lack. But I like trusted you so much.
I also said, by the way, I don't know if this is accurate.
Oh, I remember.
This is, well, you didn't say that.
Oh yeah, you said it many times.
Many times I was like, this is my perspective and I don't know if it's true, but this is what I'm picking up on, and I could be wrong.
Yeah.
I could be wrong. You
said that
many times. Thank you.
Yeah, just to put that on the record.
It wasn't, because it wasn't a harsh dig.
It was not harsh at all.
It wasn't intended to be a harsh dig. It was intended to say, this is my perspective and I'm open to being wrong. And you can correct me if I am wrong, because you know you better than I know you. Even if you view me on a pedestal, which I don't even know if I knew that you...
No, you didn't at that
right.
time. Because I admitted that to you that weekend,
Gotcha.
2 days later.
So I can only subconsciously feel it instead of intellectually understand it.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Like, I know you could feel I was upset, but I don't think you fully knew why.
Yes.
So I didn't even know why.
Yes.
And, oh my gosh, it's so wild to think about that. But for the record, he did, this was said, it was so much love. And also just like, it was casually said. It was not heavy. Like, I don't feel like you thought you were saying something big to me when you said it. But I received it as like so catastrophic.
And I could feel it was big to you because your tone changed completely on the phone. And I was like, oh, this is not what I intended. This is just like my reflection. I don't know if this is accurate. And you're clearly like short of breath,
like withering away,
and very quiet, and that's okay, you know. Like, and I respect you so much for like having the courage to talk about this. It shows you how much you've grown.
Yeah.
Because like this was only last month, you know. And who talks about something that like puts them in a potentially could be perceived as a negative light? Only someone who is comfortable with themselves enough to recognize their own shortcomings in some way.
Well, what was so interesting to me is that I'll just tell you the full thing, because why not? It's very interesting. Like, Danny was objectively right. Like, I write about romantic love. I don't have romantic love. I want romantic love. But it's not even like a one, like, oh my God, I need it. It does not feel that way at all. I feel very happy, very content, very like all my cups in every area are full. But that one. And that's okay, because it could be full if I wanted it to be. But it comes down to like, when you're living an intentional life, you want every area of your life to have that same level of intentionality. And for me, what areas is it more important to be intentional than your romantic relationship? Which is something I take so seriously. I know you do too. So it's not a matter of like, oh, like you lack it because you can't have it. It's like, no, you're just intentional about it and waiting. And well, you have to take some actions towards it, which I'm working on. But you're just, waiting to find the right person, the right fit. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. Like,
there's no rush. I mean, I feel like when you rush into something for the sake of having it, that never goes well.
Yeah.
There's no point to that. So I just want to clarify. It's not that there's like a lack in a way that's like, oh my gosh, I desperately need it or anything. What he was calling to my attention was that I desire romantic love. I write about romantic love. I don't have it. And so there's lack in my words, because there is literally lack in my words. But what I was seeing because here's my experience of writing my words. When I watch a couple near me and I write about them, which has happened just a handful of times, it feels so playful to me, like so joyous. I love observational writing. So I'll just like watch and I'll see like the certain things that they do and they say and their body language. And it's just like watching a movie to me. It's just like life is a movie. You look around, you can find something to be endlessly entertained by. For me, like romantic love is that thing. It's just so fun. Lights me up. So I'll write about it. Again, like Danny said, I don't have it. So like you're reading my words that I think are coming from a place of abundance, because I remember how I feel when I'm writing it. I don't feel like I'm like, oh God, when will it be? Like, that's not it at all. That doesn't ever go through my mind. But like, because Danny and I had never talked about romantic love, he doesn't know where I'm coming from.
Absolutely.
Like, the people who I talk about it with know where I'm coming from, but I didn't give Danny the opportunity to know that, which is why you thought it was coming from lack. But that, like, differential between your point of view and mine, like, I thought I was coming from abundance in my words, and you thought that I was coming from scarcity. The tension between those two opinions is what really made me upset. Because, again, I prioritized your truth over mine. So now here I am thinking I'm coming from abundance, and now you're telling me I'm coming from scarcity, and I trust you more than me. That's what happened.
And I think I was actually thinking about this earlier today, which is like, that's the central question of our lives. The central question of so many people's lives is, are you going to trust someone else's voice more than your own?
100%.
You've been taught, if you went to school, if you had parents who potentially loved you, is like, their voice is right. What they say is the right thing to do.
Yeah.
The teacher's voice is right.
Yeah.
You have to learn this because we think it's important. Okay, you've been indoctrinated into someone else's voice.
Yeah.
Now, can you reclaim your own?
Yes.
And the best way to do that is to look at the people who you put on a pedestal and will take their word greater than your own. For me, it was like Peter Crone or Andy Frisella or Alex Hormozi.
Yeah.
And ask yourself, what ways do I disagree with them? What ways are they not the guru, the God, the person that I admire so much? I do this with Gary Vaynerchuk all the time. I love Gary Vaynerchuk. But I ask myself, in what ways is Gary Vaynerchuk not the right hero for me? Or like balance it out in your own mind.
Absolutely.
So that you can realize this person is valuable. Like, for you, it would be like, in what ways is Danny not living a life that I want, or he's not a hero for me? Just like, make us human, you know, we're all human. And then you just like, you look at that and you're like, oh yeah, like that is a human, and they have they don't have as much power over me. And so for you, if someone's listening, it's like your parents, or it's just like, ask yourself, like, in what ways are my parents not living the life that I want in some way? Because
how can you humanize the voice in your head?
Exactly.
If it's not your own. Exactly.
Yeah. And reclaim your own voice.
Yeah.
So.
Well, there's a journey.
Yes.
To that. Like, I feel like the me of a couple of years ago, like me before July 2022, I couldn't hear my voice clearly. Like, that's why I feel like giving people, this is why I told you to study yourself. Because I think that you have made so many gains in this area. Like, what made me so, like you use the word starstruck with Peter Crone. What made me so starstruck with you was like seeing how you listen to the voice. I could feel it. Like, I could seriously feel how like you were living in such honesty and truth to what you wanted to do, that it was just so like watching you was light. It was like nothing was heavy for you. Like, even like the small questions, the big questions, like you were just playing with it all. Like, that was amazing. Like, just to watch someone exist like that is so liberating and like growing.
So what we were talking about in the kitchen, for everyone's knowledge, we were waiting for the camera batteries to charge, and we were having a conversation, which was lovely. We were talking about how there's these like fads that pop up. Like right now in this moment, it's run clubs. And like, this is such a fad that like people are actually tweeting about the fact that everyone's starting a run club, which I feel like that's like how you really know something has become that. Huh. And so
I didn't even realize it was a fad.
Well, I remember I told you, I was like, how funny is it that you just started a run club and then people are roasting run clubs now? Yeah. Like, and you were like, I didn't even see that. And I'm like, of course you did.
Like my own world.
Of course. You know, you're in your own. I love the world you live in. Your world is so peaceful, Danny. I love that world. But I sent him an example of what people were saying about the run clubs. And we were talking about how like a run club makes perfect sense for Danny, because Danny would be running by himself. If he got up at 7 a.m. and went on a run and no one else showed up, it would be a success to him. And I think that like the most important thing that you can do for the longevity of your work is to ask yourself, would I be doing this if no one cared and if no one showed up?
Yes.
For me, that's the walks.
Yes.
For Danny, that's the runs and the podcast.
Yes.
But like, what is it for you?
Yes.
I feel like if you can ask yourself, like, instead of what should I start? It's like, what should I just keep doing, but invite other people into?
Yeah.
And that doesn't have to mean a physical event. That can mean putting that thing you're already doing in a different medium or output and sharing it, right? Because it doesn't have to just be typecasted as a live experience or an event. It could be a podcast.
Yeah.
It could be a business. It could be like, take what you're doing and what you already love and extend it.
What's interesting is when it comes from that place, it's like you almost want to talk about it more. Like you want to share it more.
Yeah.
It's more real. It's more.
Because it is real.
Yeah, because it's real.
Yes,
Exactly.
it is.
It gets more exposure because it's more genuine to you than the thing that you create because someone else did it and you think it's cool that they did it.
Yes.
So that's, I mean, I've gone through periods in my life when I've just been basing my entire existence on other people's perspectives.
Absolutely.
Like if I think about college, it's like my mom and dad wanted me to go to college. And I knew in my heart, the voice was like, this isn't resonating. Like, why are you doing this? But I didn't listen.
Wow.
And so I didn't listen. I paid the price for it, going to vices that I wouldn't do today. It's like, I often think about like, what are vices and where are they coming from? It's often because somebody is not doing the thing that they feel called to do. They're not in their purpose.
Ooh.
And so like following the voice of what it's saying to you is like maybe the most important thing we can do, and why I talk about meditation so much and why I try to highlight people on the podcast who are doing the thing that they were put on earth to do, that they'd be doing anyway. And that leads people to be excited because it's like, oh, it's possible for me to find work that I find fulfilling, meaningful, and enjoyable. And that's why I bring you on the podcast, because I'm like, if you paid this woman $1 billion, she would still be doing her walks.
I absolutely would.
I guarantee you that.
Absolutely. Yes, I would.
And so why are you so obsessed with the walks? Is a question we didn't answer.
Oh my
before.
God. I did answer it and then we went somewhere.
Yeah, but not fully.
Yeah. So I started by saying this because this is very, very real for me. And I think that this could help people. Like if you want something different, like if you want to build something, and I use build very loosely because it could be create. If you want to like put something into the world that doesn't currently exist, and you want to be the one to do that. Like I feel like what was very, very helpful for me was to look at my life and say, where is the area of my life where I felt like I could never find a solution? And for me, it was, I craved being around people who wanted depth. I craved being around people who wanted meaningful, energizing conversations. I craved being around people who didn't enjoy going out, didn't enjoy drinking, didn't enjoy doing what seemingly everybody else was doing, but I couldn't find them. It's like, where are those people? Like that, because that's me, right? And so that's where the walks came from this very deep place of like, I've craved this archetype, like being around this archetype of person my entire life. And I exist, so I know others exist. And I know that I was running into them randomly. Like I would meet like a Danny Miranda and be like, oh, he's one of them. Yay. Or like I'd meet a Talia and it'd be like, oh my gosh, she's one of them. And you just feel an instant recognition and a comfort with people who are like that. But for me, the walks were an endeavor in like, how can we create a space for people like that and increase your chances of genuine connection by the nature of this happening every Saturday at 8 a.m. with these values of curiosity, kindness, and open-mindedness. And
Curiosity, kindness, and open-mindedness.
Yeah, those are the big three.
Oh, how many people have come on the walks total now?
Over 2,500.
Over 2,500 people.
Yeah.
So you're in an attempt to find your people and find the people that like inspire you in some way and that excite you.
Mm-hmm.
But 2,500 people probably don't fit into your model of curiosity-minded people who are open and kind. So what do you do when inevitably people come onto the walks that don't align with the values that you've set out?
Great question. So I'll say there's actually like levels to the experience design that makes what you just said very unlikely. So if you start from the base, I call this intentional friction. That's why it's Saturday at 8 a.m. Because who's getting up for that? Like, for real. Like, you have to feel so called to wake up at 7. Some people drive, like, the furthest somebody's ever traveled to get to the walks is 2 hours.
Oh my God.
I'm not kidding. In both San Francisco and Austin.
I'm surprised it's not further, honestly.
I know. Well, I say 2 hours because that's the only one that is the same across both cities. Someone in SF had traveled that far, and someone here.
Yeah, and people canceled their flights for it all the time.
100% and extend.
So
Yeah.
by virtue of that, they traveled thousands of miles.
Absolutely. And so when I think about like the experience design, what matters to me is the quality of the experience and the quality of the conversation rather than the quantity of people who show up.
Mm-hmm.
So like 2,500 is something I'm very proud of. But if someone were to ask like, what makes a walk a success? I don't even think I'd say that number.
Right.
Because for me, it's about the conversations walked away with. It's about the micro or macro transformations I can make in someone's life and personal growth. It's about the feelings of deep connection and belonging I can create for people in this space, this like very intentionally designed space. Like, that's what gets me excited. I track those. By the way, if you're wondering how many conversations people have walked away with, it's 1.5 million.
How did you get to that number?
I created a mathematical formula. Yeah. And I had it vetted by multiple PhDs in math and my father, who is a math wizard. Mm-hmm.
I knew that. I knew that you did that. It still shocks me.
Well, I'll give you a little secret. I
Please.
won't share that actual formula because that would just be like full Oppenheimer on here. We need like a whiteboard. But like, I use the topics that I collect, which is hard coded, into my phone with my thumbs. So I will literally, you've seen me, I walk around and I ask, what did you chat about today? So it's based off of that, which I do every single time. It's based off of the number of people who come. It's based off of the average number of people in a conversation, which is something I study. Like, all of this is very studied. People think I like just twirl around and I'm like, my walks, but like these walks are like, I'm obsessed with them. For real. Constantly. But what going back to your question, the base of the design is to root out the wrong people.
Okay.
That is the design. Like, I only want people on the walk who resonate so deeply with how it's talked about and saying, do you want a warm space for energizing conversations with people who are curious, kind, and open-minded? Are you looking, the way that I would describe the walks is like a playground to learn and grow. It's chicken soup for the soul. Mm-hmm. It's the answer to a question of what would happen if we got the smartest, kindest Ted Lassos in this city together and had them walk 5 miles and talk.
Yeah.
That the walks are the answer to everything that I just said.
Yeah.
And so if you don't resonate with that deeply, you're probably not going to show up.
Because it's 8 a.m. and what else?
It's 8 a.m. It's Saturday. It's, first of all, 5 miles, which is a very long experience. I think that like one of the biggest pieces of feedback that I get from people, and I've told you this, it's so interesting, is after the walk happens, I am so voracious about collecting feedback. It's like, that is like one of my gifts, is I have no ego about what people think. And I won't incorporate all of it because, again, you have to listen to that voice. You have to prioritize your voice over the other people's voice. But I'll tell you, this is something I hear all the time. Somebody will come for the first time. They'll come up to me afterwards and I'll ask, what did you think? And you kind of, with feedback, you can't just accept the service level because people will always do a default. You have to pattern disrupt them and be like, they'll be like, oh yeah, it was great. And then my pattern disrupt is like, were there any moments that felt uncomfortable?
Oh, wow.
Just because I want to know.
Yeah.
And then they'll stop and they'll be like, actually, yeah, I was thinking.
Wow.
And then this is where I hear this. Because like people don't offer, especially you're a host, right? Like they know how much you care. That's obvious. Like a lot of the time, it's like if someone had a baby and you didn't want to like insult that baby, so you're just going to compliment that baby.
Yeah.
I think that that's people's natural inclination when you ask for feedback.
Because we don't want to go to a place that the person is uncomfortable to go to themselves.
Absolutely. Unless you
offer.
Pattern disrupt and open the door.
which going back to what we were talking about earlier, like why do you think I'm single?
Oh, totally.
It's
That
the
was me
same
doing
thing.
that. So that was me creating parity in how I show up with other people
Yeah.
and how I showed up with you.
Yeah.
Because I'm very comfortable doing that.
Yeah. So you ask,
I ask, were there any moments that felt uncomfortable? Some version of that, but usually that.
why do you whisper that?
Because I just think it's fun. Like when I say it to someone, I create closeness
Yes.
with them. Like I give them permission to go there.
Yes.
Because like I don't like it. It's almost like you know that you're saying something taboo.
Oh, interesting.
And the other person feels like that it's a little taboo and there's a resistance to them saying it.
Yeah.
So like in my very way of asking, I acknowledge
Yeah.
its nature. Does that make sense?
Tell me where I'm ugly.
Yeah, but it's
Right,
like you're not
about
going to
the
be
event.
like, "Hey, where'd you feel uncomfortable?" Like
Yeah.
that feels very different than like, "Are there any moments where you felt uncomfortable?" Like you tell me you just received that differently.
I guess you're right.
So this is
Yeah.
a big part of it. This is another thing too you probably do. Like I think I told you this a long time ago. When I used to do my interviews on campus, if somebody were in a different eye level than me, I'd always get below them.
Yeah, that's so smart.
Always.
That's
So this is
interesting.
another way of me doing that.
Wow.
So if I feel like I'm saying something that could draw attention to somebody,
Mm.
which will make them close off, because most people are very aware, like everyone thinks everyone's looking at them.
Mm.
That's how most people are. But like no one is. But everyone thinks that they're, the main character of their own life. So of course everyone's looking at me. So if I were to like be walking around, I'm the host, right? And I'm saying, "Hey, where'd you feel uncomfortable?" Then the immediate thing is like, "Oh my God, what do I say to you?"
Yeah, is she gonna get me?
Exactly.
It's
It
not
feels like a
camera.
gotcha.
Yeah.
So I think all the time about like, how can I play with the underlying emotion that the person might be feeling? And so in that situation, it would be like like a discomfort with saying the truth because it may not be received well. So then I mirror that in my tone.
Yeah.
So
Makes
anyway,
sense.
that was a very long,
No, I appreciate
in
that.
depth, but this is how I think a lot.
Yeah.
Like I do these methods, like they're very, I've never actually said that out loud, but like I'm doing that a lot
Wow.
in my events.
Okay, so what do people usually say where they're uncomfortable?
So I'll say this.
I'll say this.
I'll say it just like that. And then I'll kind of like getting closer. And they'll be like, "Well, now that you mention it, there were moments during the walk where I found it really hard to switch conversations.
Oh.
And I think it could be like really helpful if you forced us to switch." And I'd be like, "How interesting. Okay. Like, how did it make you feel in those moments?" And they were like, "Well, I guess I kind of felt like I wanted to leave the conversation, but I didn't want to be rude. And I just felt stuck. But I knew I was doing it to myself." This is where it gets real good. You watch them realize this.
Yeah.
Like you sit there and you just let this happen. And this has happened like, no joke, over 50 times.
Wow.
This exact thing. Like almost identical. If I recorded it for you, men, women, young, old,
Wow.
like all backgrounds, all races. This is the exact same thing that plays out. And then I'll let it play out and I'll be like, "Well, now that I'm saying this, like, I guess like it wasn't anyone's fault. Like I could have left."
Wow.
And I was like, and then I'll go, "Well, what if you came back to the next walk and you practiced how to leave when you wanted to leave?" And this is where you see in somebody, like you see in their face that they realize where they aren't free and where they have work to do. And that they're realizing that the walk is an environment for them to practice.
Freedom.
Yes.
How responsible do you think we are to freedom? Like to give ourselves freedom and to lead people to freedom?
Responsible is an interesting word. Can you share more about why you use that word?
It's like, if you feel pretty free, if you feel it's like, do you have a do you think it's like our inherent nature to just like want to be free in as many situations as possible? Or do you think we need to be shown like, this is where I'm not free? Is like that why therapy is so effective?
Yeah.
Because people are like, oh, I'm actually not free here, or I'm actually not free there.
That's a great question. I would say, like you asked at the very beginning why I'm so obsessed with the walks, it's because I think we have over-indexed on telling people where they're not free without giving them the space
to figure it out
to
for themselves.
practice or to see it.
Yeah.
So if I tell you everything I've been through in my life and you can analyze it and say, look, here, turn over this rock, and like, here's your playbook for being free.
Yeah.
Okay, now I have all of this awareness.
Yeah.
Okay. But like awareness without action is self-destruction. That is what I experienced when I would run through my thought loops and listen to the voice in my head over the voice in my body.
Yeah.
And so if you have all the awareness in the world, you know, if someone's coming at you and saying like, hey, I observed this about you, you will never see me do that on the walks.
Yeah.
Like when I say that I like have feedback conversations with people, it is never me coming to them and saying, I observed this in you.
Right.
It is me asking questions and exploring with somebody and having them see it for themselves. Because nothing is more powerful than somebody guiding you to your own truth.
Yeah.
If I tell you your truth, you might sit with it and you're, you know, very free, I would say. You're freer than the average bird, if you will. So now you're at this point where I can tell you a truth,
right,
and you integrate it very fast. But I say like people who are less free, right, and who are held to these patterns, you tell them a truth, they're not ready to hear that.
Yeah.
Because they haven't experienced what they need to experience, or you know, they have the awareness, but they're not ready to integrate. There's a resistance there. Like when you just tell somebody rather than giving them an environment to see it, giving them an environment that creates the very situation that now as me as the host, I can sit here and say, you know, you're not alone in saying that. 50 other people have said that same thing to me.
Wow.
Because I've done this 66 times, right? So you're not alone in this at all.
Yeah.
But what I would, you know, encourage you to do is, what if you came back next week and you practiced what it was like to lead the conversation? And I promise you, if you come back, you're going to get better. And they do.
Yeah.
And I see the compounding effects, walk after walk, of someone micro challenging themselves. And it can be something, and these are all in the ground rules. So like, this is just one example, but like leaving conversations when you want to. That skill extends beyond the walks. That skill extends to you showing up to any event, any happy hour, people who come up to you in public, anywhere, any interpersonal situation where you have to talk to another human being and you stay in there too long because you feel like it's rude or impolite to leave. You coming on the walks and practicing how to do that there will extend outward.
What about a career, a relationship?
Everywhere.
Right?
Like that's the beauty of it. Is it like it doesn't stay in the container.
Yeah.
The container is the playground to
Yes.
learn, grow, and experiment. And then you take it outside, right? That's just one example though. So also in the ground rules, because a lot of the elements for transformation are in the ground rules, which people don't realize until it happens. That's
Okay.
the beauty of it. So one of them is, I encourage you to talk to at least 5 people in every walk. That's 1 person per mile. When I'm in the ground rule speech, I'll say, can you raise your hand if you find that easy to do? Because the distribution of the walks at this point, it's about 50, 60 people who come on average, and at least 10 new people every time. So everybody who's answering these questions has come, in some cases over 60 times. So when I ask, do you find it easy or hard? It's actually very informative to see, and comforting to see that there are people who find it very easy to do, to float around, to talk to 5 people. And there are people like me. When I ask who finds it difficult, I raise my hand. To this day, 66 in, I can barely hit 5.
Really?
Yeah, because I like going deep with people.
So why is that in the ground rules if you like going deep with people, or like that's your preference?
Because there's a difference between me choosing and me feeling like I have to do it. There's a difference between choice and obligation. When I first started doing the walks, I would talk to fewer people because I wasn't listening to the voice and wasn't leaving the conversation.
I see.
You see what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's the difference, is if you make your own experience, you choose your own adventure. If it feels right to you to talk to 3 people on the walk and you didn't have that voice come to you one time and said, leave this conversation, hell yeah. But if you're talking to 3 people and you come to me afterwards and say, I found it really awkward to switch. I found it really hard to switch. I wanted to leave the conversation and I didn't. That's because you felt obligated.
Yeah.
That wasn't your choice.
Yeah.
So that's what you're encouraging people to see. So I'll put it in the rules. Just plant a little seed. You plant a little seed to say, some people have a goal of talking to 5 or more people each time. It's 1 person per mile, right?
Yeah.
So if you're a first timer, you have no clue what to expect. People take that goal really seriously. They find it very helpful.
This is a question that I get a lot. It's like, how do you know when to end a conversation? And I'm like, I don't know. I just follow what feels right to me. But what advice would you give to somebody who's coming on the walk? It's like, how do I know when it's over?
When you choose it's over. Like when you... So this is an interesting question because it's easier to answer with more practice. Okay. And by more practice, I mean, I very much see, like if you zoom out, the walks are this playground to experiment and grow and to build your social confidence. The way that I see it is that every walk, you get at least 5 reps in. Because if I'm setting a goal of talking to 5 people on every walk, that's 5 people that I'm practicing with. And if I've gone on 5 walks, that's 25 reps, right? Mm-hmm. To build that social confidence. And that I use that because that's what people see. They see the compounding effects of coming time and time again. Every time they get a little better, a little more confident. They come to me and say this. That's how I felt. Now I'm unstoppable. I know when to end a conversation because I have gotten so many reps in. Yeah. I know what it feels like. Yeah. There's a familiarity and a acceptance.
Of this is over.
And also it's not heavy.
Yes.
I think when people hesitate to take an action, it's because they're putting a weight on it that doesn't need to be there. Like, think about this.
Well, just replay your own words back to you, to like the situations of that hold you charge. You're putting a weight on it that doesn't need to be
Absolutely.
there.
Absolutely.
And I'd say that to every place I'm not free, or any place anyone's not free.
Absolutely. It's a different way of looking at charge.
Yeah. It's just like, there's no weight on it.
And this is a visual I really enjoy, which I had gotten from the Ram Dass Experiments in Truth lectures. Ever since I heard this, it's such like an emblem of how I want to live my life. When it comes to energy exchange, he had said that it's like holding a necklace of beads, like a rosary, and going from hand to hand. The give and take. You're not paying attention to who's giving. You're not paying attention to who's taking. It's just effortless. There's a flow. But when you assign meaning or heaviness or weight to the situation, you're now passing a 1 pound weight from hand to hand. And who's giving and who's taking is very obvious. Wow. And it's all very heavy. It's like, how can you get yourself to holding the beads? And with more practice, the more walks you go on, it changes from the 1 pound weight to the beads.
That's a fascinating way to look at it. It also like reminds me of like people who keep tallies of like, this is what you did for me.
Keeping score. One of the biggest relationship killers.
Yes.
Like proven time and time again in the studies is that it's keeping score that kills relationships. Because you're not operating out of kindness. You're operating out of expectation or obligation or lack, or I'm doing so that I get.
Yeah.
And then you're in this dance where it's like, oh, well, you took out the trash. last time. So now it's my turn. And then vice versa. And then it's like this never ending tally card that builds so much resentment in people because it's heavy. Because now you put a meaning on these actions that never had to be there. When in reality, if we're all coming at the walks from a place that, or I use the walks in this way because everything goes back to the walks, so LOL. But if we approach the walks, what if we approach relationships in a sense of like, what can I give to this interaction? You know, like how can I show up? And even if it's your presence is more than enough. You don't have to give. And I learned this through our relationship when I was putting you on the pedestal, right? It's like, I told myself, you never told me this. I told myself this, that I had to give you value.
Yeah.
That's why. Absolutely. Well, I had to give you value because you were giving me value. That's what happens when there's a non-neutral charge, is that you tell yourself like, oh, well, you know, when I reach out to Danny, I've got to have a really good idea for him. So the only time that I was reaching out to you is when I had something for you. Like that's what I created. I created that dynamic. You didn't know that I was doing that.
No.
And I didn't even really know I was doing that. Now I know.
How do you make the unconscious conscious?
Oh my gosh. What a good question. That is a really good question. I feel like that is one of those questions that could you create? I know what worked for me, right? Like if I looked at myself and said, how did I make the unconscious conscious for me?
Mm-hmm.
First, I put myself in more situations to honor my voice intentionally. What that meant is, and I think that a lot of the times it's like when you aren't comfortable or confident, like think about what we were talking about when you were like, years ago, I could never go to a party by myself.
Yeah.
Right? So when you're in that mindset, it sounds like really impossible to make a move in that direction to where you're like, oh, put myself out there. It's like, that's how it sounds to people. Like, oh, put myself out there. I can't just do that. But it's like, find like low stakes, low pressure ways where you can do that just to practice. So like for me, that would be like the elevator conversations, low stakes, no expectations, but you're putting yourself out there just a little bit. You're disrupting your own pattern just a little bit, right? And then when you start doing that, you become addicted to it. And then you level up. It's just like this is what happens on the walks too, of course. But like the reps, just like in the gym, progressive overload, right? So it's like you start small. You can't start lifting 100 pounds. You got to start somewhere. And then you build it and build it and build it. And now you're like the belle of the ball for social confidence. But you have to start at the smallest level. Some might say, sure. But I see this in people. So it's like what I did for myself is like I started putting myself out there in the smallest ways, the smallest pattern disrupts. Like how do I play with the moment? Like how do I stand in the grocery line for Trader Joe's and talk to the cashier a little more than I would?
Yeah.
You know, how do I ask a question that's not how are you?
Yeah.
You know, how do I go to the nail salon and really earnestly ask a ton of questions in that 2 hours of that person's life?
Yeah.
You know, how do I take what I'm already doing? So you're not adding anything. This is key. Take what you're already doing and just slightly change it. That's where it started for me. That's where you build confidence. And then you get to a point where you can go a little further. So now instead of just taking what you're already doing and adding to it, you're doing new things because you have the confidence to do that. So now it's like, what would it be like to go to a happy hour? Okay, now I'm going to go. And those first couple, they're not going to be easy, and especially if you're going from 0 to happy hour. So you built a little bit of confidence. You go there and you know, no expectations, low stakes. If I meet no one, if I walk away and like no one resonated with me, at least I went. You put that as your marker of success. It's like I was present. I went there and I tried. Don't put any other expectations on yourself. And then the more you do that, it's like there's like levels to a video game. You just keep adding to it and adding to it. And especially if you find something, which I think this is what the walks are for a lot of people. The walks are that thing, that feel so low expectation because I make it low expectation. I don't promise you're going to come and find a friend. You will never, if you look back in the history of me talking about the walks,
Yeah.
I never promise something I can't deliver on.
Yeah.
Very important to me. I never promise you come here and you'll make a friend. I never promise come here to find your people. I never promise any of that. I mean, literally, the only thing I promise is 5 miles and energizing conversations. That's it. That's all I will put the stake in the ground on. Whatever happens outside of that is a happy bonus.
Yeah.
And it's a pretty high likelihood it will. But I don't want, when you put a really high expectation on an experience, either for yourself or as the person doing the experience, you're setting yourself or the people who come up for disappointment.
Yeah.
Like, and you're also setting them up to think, oh, wow, I'm going to go here and I'm going to make a friend.
Yeah.
How exciting.
Yeah.
It's like, but then they go and then they don't make a friend and then they get turned off
Because
from going to events.
Reality and expectations
Yes.
were so far out of alignment.
Because then this is what I did to myself. You go. It doesn't happen. You don't make a friend. And you think everyone else made a friend.
Something's wrong with me.
Yes. You internalize it when it was never meant to be internalized. That's why I'm so big on low expectations as the host.
Yes.
Because I know what it felt like. I did this to myself years ago when I had first moved here and I didn't have a network and I didn't have anyone in this city. And I would go to a meetup event and there were the word friend thrown around a lot. Make new friends. You know, there's this one group. It was like, I love Austin, but I need some effing friends.
Oh.
That's one of the names of one of the most popular meetup groups in the city. That's the name. So this word's thrown around everywhere. So you see it, then you go, and it doesn't happen for you, and you other yourself.
Wow.
So that's why. I mean, I feel like you think about the expectation. So these little micro decisions. I mean, every little part of this matters for somebody who is just starting to put themselves out there.
Yeah.
It's like that no expectation environment is so, so, so important. So then the more you do, the more levels you raise, then the unconscious becomes conscious.
Yeah. What I love about this is that it's about other people.
Yeah.
Like it's all through, you see yourself more clearly through other people.
Absolutely.
And it's really like using other people in the situations that occur as your mirrors.
Yes.
If you allow it to, you really can see your own unconscious in the way you act around others.
Yes.
Are you willing to say something kind to somebody when you see their hat just walking on the street?
Yes.
Are you willing to approach a girl you think is attractive if you're a man and heterosexual, right? So it's like all of these things, or like if you're just willing to go up to someone and say like, hey, I like your style. Like if there is any resistance to that, you're not free there.
Absolutely.
Hence, there's something that is there for your exploration.
Absolutely. Yeah. Wow. It's so true what you just said, because I actually think that this is a key place where we are going wrong today. This hyper individualism of our society, where it's like self-care.
Yes.
And do you go to therapy? And are you working on yourself? And it's like, from where I'm standing, you can only solve fully relationship issues in relationship. I can't solve my relationship issues with myself. Like, what?
So
I mean, no, seriously. So it's like you hear in everybody's saying, well, are you self-examined? But like, remember what we said, awareness without action is self-destruction. Where does the action come in? Right?
Yeah. With other people.
With other people, there's no other way.
Yeah.
So it's like when I was thinking about making the unconscious conscious, what really was my accelerant was, first of all, I had this beautiful foundation of what I just told you about going from level to level of confidence. Because the more confidence you have, especially social confidence, the more you put yourself out there and the more people can mirror where you are not free back to you. And it was only like the state that I'm in now, which I feel like is probably, bold statement, my most evolved form. Work to do.
I believe
way
it.
Further to go.
I believe it.
This is we're not even like in the first leg of the race on this, but like I feel like I'm in a very good place.
Listen, you're posting your Instagram stories on Twitter.
I am. We're evolving, Daniel. We're going in the right direction. But like speaking from this place, when I look back and I see the holistic journey of like July of 2022 to today, it was every single leg of that journey. But then when things started going really fast was when I was operating in so much out of my purpose that the right people who aligned so heavily with what I was doing, like you, like Talia, like Zach, people like that, were coming into the field and reflecting things to me. Because like that, to me, you have to be in a place to receive that.
Yes.
That's why if we were to have met last year, before I had done those little things, before I started talking to strangers in the elevator, you'd probably tell me things and I'd cry. I mean, I'd probably just sob. I wasn't ready for that.
Yeah.
But like now you can say something to me and I'll just be like, true. You're right. Let me think about that. Let me go integrate that. You know?
Yeah.
It's totally different state.
Yeah. I was thinking about this because I was talking to someone with who was saying to me that they have difficulties with their mother and like how much they resent their mother, but they love her, but they resent her so much and holding so much anger and animosity. And I was like, what is my role here? You know, what is my role here to help this person or not? Or I accept them for where they're at, obviously, and I'm appreciative for their journey, but it's like, are they just not ready to take the next step? Or maybe the conversation or the questions lead to the next step in some way. And so I was sitting with that yesterday, like, what's my role in helping someone be free? Hence where the responsibility question comes from. So
here's how I see it for me.
yeah, please.
I think that once you're on the path to doing what you want in most moments, if not all moments, and you're feeling like you're putting yourself out there very authentically and people are saying things to you, and if they do trigger you or impact you, you're able to sit with it, integrate, and come back, which is what happened with me and you. And just to finish that story for everybody wondering, after this conversation that Danny and I had on the phone, I had such an extreme reaction to it. I use extreme meaning that it was a very emotional reaction. So I cried and I actually wrote about it. And I was like, oh, I don't know if I can ever talk to Danny again. Like it really went through my mind. I've told him this, so he knows. But like it was such an extreme reaction because I felt like somebody in my life who really saw me so fully and completely got it wrong. And I couldn't reconcile that, but it's because I put you on that pedestal that even happened. So then when I sat with myself, this is how I got through that. If this resonates with anybody, I was so bothered by my reaction because I was like, Danny is an amazing person. I love having him in my life. I love him as a human being. Why would I ever not talk to him again? Like I'm bothering myself. Like I was like bothered. I'm like, oh, that's so silly. Like why
There's
would
something unconscious here.
There's something there. I had to get to it. So what I did was I sat in my car and I was like, you know what? I'm just going to talk to myself on a voice note until I figure it out.
Wow.
And I talked to myself and it's still on my phone for like 47 minutes.
47 minutes.
47 minutes.
You did a solo podcast.
All by myself. And it was like, I hit record on this thing. The voice note part is for accountability because I think sometimes you can say, you know, I'm going to sit here and figure this out. And then you like talk a little bit and then you're like, you want to distract yourself. So it's like, oh, I got to go. I was sitting outside this restaurant. I'm like, oh, I got to go to lunch. You know, you can make up an excuse, but no, I'm recording. I'm live on the air and, you know, I hit record. So I've got to say something now. So like that works for me.
Yeah,
like I
really
know
good.
what works to motivate me. And so I hit record. And the first little bit, as I started talking, because it was so deeply emotional for me, was me like crying and like just releasing and almost like speaking in tongues, like not even kidding. Like I asked myself, like show me why this is bothering me so much.
Because you couldn't figure it out.
I could not figure out why I would react so strongly to something you said, because I never had that reaction to you before. So I was like, show me why this hurts. Like just over and over and over again. I probably said that like for 2 minutes, just that over and over and over. And then eventually it switched and I just started speaking from like a deeper place, a very emotional place. And then what kept coming to me that I kept saying over and over again was any amount of performance is too much. That's what I kept saying to myself. And that's when I realized that what I had told you on that phone call before you had reflected what you did to me was that you were putting some of your guests on a pedestal.
Mm-hmm.
And I had told you that. And then the very next thing, when you flipped the conversation to me and you had told me that thing about feeling lack in my words, and I cried and I felt so embarrassed and judged and like you didn't see me and that you didn't get me. And I was like, oh my gosh, how could this guy who sees me so well and so clearly not get me? It was so painful to be like seen incorrectly by you. You weren't seeing me incorrectly, but I like told myself you were. It was so painful for me. And so then the next day, here I am. And that's the phrase, any amount of performance is too much. And I was like, oh my gosh, wait. What I told him on the phone is the lesson.
Mm.
That's why it's hurting me so much. Because I'm putting him on the pedestal. I had brought to your awareness that you were putting some of your guests on a pedestal.
Yeah.
And all the while, here I am doing it to you, and I couldn't see it. And it just came to me while I was saying that phrase. Because I was performing for you.
Wow.
That's what I was doing. Like, and it just all clicked. It was just a beautiful way of like, if you've never done that before, or if you're someone who struggles to access, a deeper voice, try that. Give it a try. I didn't read that anywhere. I just did that.
Yeah.
And it worked so well. And then after that conversation I had with myself, I went into the restaurant, ate lunch, and then around 3 p.m., I mustered the courage to send Danny a text. And you remember?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I sent him a text basically saying, as you probably know, our conversation cut very deeply for me. And I'd like the opportunity to tell you why, but it needs to be in person because there have been parts of me that I've suppressed from you. And I really appreciate how honest you are with me. And I'm grateful for you reflecting my truth back to me as always. And so I sent that. And then Danny was like, walk at 6:30. And I was like, yes. And then we had this conversation for 6 hours. So I just wanted to give him the conclusion because I think that like my own discovery method on like, here was a place where I was very stuck
And unconscious.
That's how I made it conscious. Like it would only have been possible because of you,
Mm-hmm.
because of you having the courage as a mirror to me to say a potentially hard truth, which I think a lot of people in comfortable relationships avoid saying those things
Mm-hmm.
because they fear the reaction of the other person.
Definitely.
But in reality, we fear a reaction that doesn't exist because you're robbing the other person the chance of reacting.
Yes.
Like what I was doing by like avoiding you was basically robbing me of the opportunity to connect with you and maintain an amazing relationship that means so much to me.
Yeah.
Right. Like I was doing that. And then I was also saying like, oh, I never want to talk to Danny again. And so this is done. So like, bye, Danny. like that robs everybody,
Yes.
just because I didn't want to face it. I didn't want to go there.
Yeah. And how many, friendships have ended because of that, because of something like that. It also reminded me that like what the advice we often give is the advice that we most need to receive.
Yes.
So it's like when you give advice, ask yourself, how does this apply to me?
Oh yeah.
Right? Like that,
Oh, yeah.
that is such a powerful way to make the unconscious conscious is literally look at your words and reflect them back to yourself if you can in that moment.
Wow.
Because we have all the answers within. Always.
And it's also interesting because like what's on your mind and what's in your awareness, like for someone else, is often such a good roadmap to like where it's showing up in you. Like here I am telling you, like I need to feel you more in the podcast.
Yes.
And I need to feel you more in the
Yes.
medium. And then it's like, okay, let me like look at myself for a moment.
It's like, where am I not showing up?
Yeah.
Because that's your common criticism. It's like, I want people to feel what I feel when I'm in person with you. And I don't feel that when I listen to the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a fair criticism, obviously. But it's also like, where's that not true for me? For the person giving it. And it's like we could learn so much from just listening to ourselves.
And Dang. It's so true though. And then just so everyone knows, you may have noticed that this is in Danny's home.
Yes, apartment.
Oh, yes. Oh, well,
I mean,
I like this the sake of accuracy.
yeah.
We're in Daniel's apartment, and this is the first episode that you filmed in a non-studio. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. I mean, I did record one a while ago, like a long, long time ago, in my apartment, but that was in New York City. But yeah.
Oh, really?
First one in a long time.
So the very fact that this is happening is, in a way, you making the podcast feel more like you.
Yes.
It's like taking that conversation we've had for months and like taking a step towards it.
Yeah. It just like, it's interesting as you have helped me understand that I have the gift in every moment.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it has reflected such a more easeful way of being that kind of makes me realize there's nothing ever wrong in an even more understanding way. And that applies to the podcast as well. And so I can't do it wrong. And so if it's supposed to be in an apartment, great. If it's supposed to be in a studio, great. If it's supposed to be outdoors, also great. And really, like, how much would your life look differently if all you did was just understand that you can't do it wrong and that it's perfect the way it is and give your best effort, but also you can't do it wrong. Like, to me, that is, that question and just like living in that energy has helped me so much. So thank you for giving me that gift.
Oh, of course. How does this feel?
It feels great. I feel like I can't, it feels more real. It's hard to tell because it's you. And it always feels more real with you. It always feels like another level of depth and understanding when we do our phone calls or walks or whatever. And I'm so grateful for just like having this as a timestamp for our friendship, you know? Because it's like, where is this going? Like, it feels like this is building towards something.
Doesn't it?
You know?
So interesting. I know, I was thinking that because you know when I told you when I was interviewed on the bridge last year, which, by the way, the only reason that you even reached out to me.
That's it.
How interesting is that? Because that was before the walks. Like I told you, it was 2 weeks before the walks.
Wow.
July 3rd.
So what's happening in 2 weeks? You know?
Isn't that amazing? Oh my gosh. Like, just so everybody knows, basically, I go on these walks all the time, not just the group walks, but also solo walks. And I was walking on the pedestrian bridge downtown. This guy named Miles came up to me and he was like, "Hey, would you be down for an interview?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure. Why not?" You know, when someone asks you this, you're thinking man on the street. You're thinking like, you know, these videos you see all the time, gotcha moments. Now this guy is coming out with like, do you feel as connected as you want to be in this world? You know, do you have love in your life? What if you could do one thing? What would it be? If you could change the world in one way? I mean, it was just
I gotta
like,
interview this guy.
I know the depth of these questions. I was like, holy, like amazing. And it was like a 50-minute interview that became like a journal entry. And that's what this feels like to me. Like, I feel like the experience that we're co-creating right now is a timestamp in truth. Like, that's what it is. It's so authentic. Like, there's no amount of me. Like, I'm forgetting that we're recording multiple times.
Yeah.
Like, it isn't like when I like remember we're recording is when I'm like, oh wait, because this is something. Pro tip: if you're in a conversation, I learned this through the walks, and somebody joins your conversation, give them the context. Such a game changer. It's such a small thing. So that's what I keep doing to the audience because we're talking about things from our friendship that are so alive to us, but they have no clue what we're talking about. So I keep trying to ground myself in like the context because those details matter. And like, it's in those details, like these little specifics about me sitting in my car and recording a voice note for 47 minutes and crying and speaking in tongues. And then I texted you because I felt the courage to do it. That's what people learn from, is like the depth of the story. You know, it's like we can be talking in like platitudes and talking in generalizations, but it's like the nitty gritty is what people really, especially if you listen to interviews, they glaze over that because both people are in the understanding of what it means. But like, I like to try to speak and write from a place of like, this is me when I was trying to figure it out. Because like, that's what helps people. Like, you can have a big speaker or somebody who comes on here and does, you know, 2 podcast interviews a week, who says the same script over and over. And it's like, yeah, parts of that will resonate, but how?
Yeah.
How? Like, I agree with you, but how did you do it?
Yeah.
Like, I loved how you asked me that question about how do you make the unconscious conscious? Like, how interesting. I don't know if what I do works for other people, but you challenged me to think about what I do. And if one person tries one of the things we talked about, whether it's like talking to strangers in the elevator and building the confidence, or like recording voice notes to themselves and trying to figure out where they're unfree, if one person does that, that's massive because we went there.
Yeah.
So I don't know why I got so excited about that, but I genuinely am very lit up by the idea of like what this environment. What are you smiling so good?
Just happy.
This environment creates a comfort to go into the details.
Yeah.
Whereas if we were in a studio,
Yeah.
I think it's like such a different feeling where you're like
performative.
It's performative, and it's
any
like
bit of performance is too much.
straight from my voice note,
Straight from God.
straight from him, capital H. But do you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
As I think, like, I'm trying to really think about this. I like playing in these scenarios. If we were in a studio right now, I think I would have oriented myself towards safety instead of truth.
Oof. Yeah.
And that's me saying this.
Yeah.
And I think I'm like quite comfortable
Yeah.
with truth and unsafety
Yeah.
in this moment. So imagine how that extends beyond me.
Yeah. And there's also something about like, there's no one in the space.
Yeah.
There's no one, you haven't seen anyone else. Like there's no, it really is just feel safe.
Yeah.
Which is just so different than if one person's energy is involved that you don't trust or you don't like, even if you saw them in the space or in the studio, you're just like something.
I have something to anchor this in. It's so amazing. It's an amazing parallel for the walks. When I have to have I call them feedback conversations, but again, it's very collaborative. And a lot of these conversations, people don't even realize I've had with them because of the way I do them, because I'm asking questions and I'm like leading them to an answer or a realization without shame. So important. Why I'm drawing this parallel is if something happened that I need to address, and I say this in a way that sounds like disciplinarian, but it's very light, because that's the way that it'll actually cause a transformation in someone. When you come to someone and you say, hey, I have feedback for you, their fight or flight goes to the roof. Like they are hanging on every word and they're afraid. Like that's what that activates in most people. So I never do it like that. So you think about this, like if I know that I have to have a conversation with someone on the walk, I will never do it on the walk itself. I will never go up to them in a place that other people can hear.
Praise in public, criticize in private.
Because of what you just said. Because the same way that people are in a studio and one additional energy can change. It takes them out.
Yeah.
Because it's not just me and you anymore.
Yeah.
Now it's, oh, is there somebody putting my mic on?
Yeah.
And like, how do I feel about them?
Yeah.
Like, are they hearing me?
Yeah.
It like creates any level of being seen by someone who you're not looking at.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I have an audience.
Yeah.
I have an audience and I'm performing.
Yeah.
That's what it unlocks in people.
Yeah.
So when we're here and we're just in this place, I know there's no one here, but you, and them, I guess, but like, it's just me and you here.
Yeah. It feels different.
It feels so different. Like and I'm saying this as somebody who has struggled with defaulting to performance. And I feel very comfortable, which is a testament to like the fidelity of this format and why I love it so much for you. It's like, that's your gift. Like your gift, but not anyone could do this successfully. Few people could, in my lens, because we're in a cozy space and that's very you. It fits your personality.
Yeah.
It fits how you show up. It fits how you interview.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I just want everything to feel like a Jack Johnson song. That's really been my new anchor
I love that.
Feels
very right.
Doesn't it?
It does.
Like, oh, like that is the most me.
It is.
That just feels like my vibration.
It is.
And Rick Rubin actually helped show that.
How?
Well, he interviewed Jack Johnson and he interviewed John Mayer. And I'm like, whatever that is, that's what we're going, that's the North Star.
Really?
Yeah.
How would you describe Jack Johnson?
A mix of wisdom with carefreeness, and a mix of everything's all right, but we're going to try our best. And I feel that about Rick Rubin as well. And their connection on their podcast together was so beautiful because it was two vibrations that were similar, interacting and just like commenting on each other. And so those are the first words or vibrations that come to mind of just an ease, like a general ease, is what comes. And it feels good to listen to Jack Johnson, right? Like it's a great vibration. So it's like, how do I just make it feel like that for a podcast, for whatever I do? So thank you.
In your mind's eye, because I know we've talked about this, because for everybody, of course, me
you and your people,
me and the people, I have to tell them because like we have so many conversations that it's like there's so much that got us to this.
Yeah.
But the conversation I told you all about when it comes to Danny and his medium not being audio and shifting his mindset to live experiences as a medium, which is also very much how I see my medium. And that's why he and I are so similar and can reflect these things back to each other. It's like when we were having that conversation, and then the next thing that I gave to you was like changing the physical space and location of the podcast.
Yes.
To align more with like if Danny built a live experience from first principles, from the ground up, what would it look like? If you had full freedom, creative expression, what would it look like? I'd be curious, what do you say to that now? Because I asked you that a month ago.
I feel a lot of white, just like a lot of white everywhere.
And you're wearing white, which is funny.
And a lot of light as well.
This is the first time I've seen you wear a light sweatshirt.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's usually gray.
Yeah, gray.
This is a good look for you.
Thank you.
I like this. We need more light color, Danny. It's like in your logo.
Yes. Well, for a long time I've discounted like the physical being and like the clothing that I wear and all this because I'm like, I'm looking at someone's soul. But I do realize it makes a difference in how it's received, is all of it.
Well, you're looking at their soul, but what are they looking at?
Right. Absolutely.
So what does it look like to anchor the guest experience?
Yeah. And I guess like that extends beyond to just when you say the guest, like the human experience who's interacting with me, right? And because you can draw so many different interpretations on the same thing, I don't often value the other person's experience of me.
Ooh.
Because I know I'm coming from a place of love. So it's like, if you view me as wearing a white shirt because I want to appear a certain way, like I know there's a million different reflections. So I don't value it that highly.
How interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is why also, like, I don't care about the look of things generally, but that I've tried to teach myself that other people do value the looks of things.
Oh, yeah. Wow. This is a really interesting one. You've never told me this before.
Yeah. No, I'm very aware of this.
Is it because you discard what you can't directly influence or control? Which is smart, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. That's part of it. It's part of it. Just like, I don't have a very aesthetic taste. Like, and what I'm looking for is beauty in the soul, not beauty in the physical form. And because of that, I just look past what we're wearing as like, okay, those are the table stakes. It would be like if someone comes in with a lot of money, I'm like, okay, great. But like, who are you?
Yeah.
I view the money the same way as the clothing.
Okay.
What is this? What do we got here?
We're circling it back to your
course.
question on what is our responsibility.
Where are we circling it back to? What is our responsibility to show up with physical stuff?
Where is it our responsibility to help people see where they're not free? You asked me that question like 30 minutes ago.
Yes.
This is a part of it. So it's not obvious yet.
Tie it together for me.
Okay.
She's about to cook.
Oh, she about to cook. Where's the apron? Okay.
It's not connecting for me. So
I'm so glad that you said that. Okay. When you're built, this is how I see this.
Mm-hmm.
When you're somebody who sees the world like what you just described,
Yeah.
you're seeing past the material possessions. You're seeing past the clothing. You're seeing the soul.
Yes.
Right?
I'm trying my best to.
Exactly. And you do very well at it. That's literally you and your gift, right? But we can also see, if we zoom out of you, and I'll just speak from my experience, like you are a rare person. You're a special person. And you have done a lot of work on yourself and integrated that in collaboration with other people to see the world the way that you see it.
Mm-hmm.
This is where it becomes very important to say, how was Danny in 2018 seeing the world? And like, this is how I see when I ground myself in how do I build the walk experience. I'm going to use this parallel because it'll make it make sense. This is the same for you as in meeting people where they are, meeting most people where they are to make them feel comfortable, to hit play, to come to the event, to be brought into the experience and to be lifted into, even if it's just the smallest amount of a higher state.
Yeah.
But if you aren't meeting people where they are in a way that still feels true to you, see, this is where your mismatch was, right? Because you're meeting people where they are in a way that looks like everyone else.
Yes.
Out of necessity. And that wasn't because that was your choice. It was just like, okay, I have a podcast. Here's a podcast studio that I'm going to pay for. And here I am in the podcast studio that everybody else uses. And it looks all the same.
Right.
But like what you were doing in that moment is you were discounting you. Because you're saying, oh, that doesn't matter to me. Right? You're saying like, oh, the location doesn't matter to me. I don't see the location. I see the person. I see the soul.
Yes.
But other people who are receiving that piece of content, that micro decision, when they see it in their feed, they're scrolling right past because they're like, oh, this guy is just operating like everybody else.
Yes.
Been there, done that. I've already watched James Clear's interview. Don't need to see it another time. Cool.
Yes.
But they're not realizing that you are creating a different experience because it looks like the experiences that everyone else is creating. Does this make sense now?
Yes.
So I think our responsibility, like if you are somebody who has done a lot of work to understand yourself and to understand your limiting beliefs and your moments of unfreedom, right? Your responsibility is then to say, okay, how can I look at myself and say, this is what I love to do. For you, it's having meaningful conversation. It's running. For me, it's having meaningful conversation and it's walking, right? How funny. How can we take that to the next level by inviting people into the experience where they are? So when I think about the walk, it looks so simple from the outside by design. You will never see me say, and I never have said, come to the walk to transform as a person. Mm-hmm. I don't promise that. It happens, but I'm not going to say that because what is that going to bring in? People who
want to transform,
who are already transforming.
Yes.
That excludes people who have shared values, but maybe a little anxious or a little bit scared or a little bit socially unconfident or a little bit isolated, or somebody who's like, I don't know if I can transform.
Right.
Somebody who has any level of doubt will see how you're packaging that and not go.
Yes.
So it's like our responsibility in this situation as people who have done the work, and this applies to anyone, not just me and him, but anybody in this state.
Meet people where they're at.
Is to meet people where they're at and then take their hand and bring them forward. Even if it's an inch up. I see that as my responsibility.
It's so beautifully said.
Did I actually go full circle there?
Yeah.
Are you with me?
Yes.
Okay. I know you doubted me for a second.
No,
you were
there was no doubt. I just didn't see it. I wasn't aware of what you're putting down. And and it is true. Like your responsibility is to meet people where they're at.
Yes.
And that, forces you to reflect on like, where were you at? And what did you need most in 2018? And that's sitting with that is important.
It goes back to, it's amazing how this applies here. The intersection between selfish and selfless.
Yes. It's like you can't lose yourself by being someone else.
Totally. So that's where like, if I were to reflect this to you, right?
Yeah.
Like you have always been doing what you love when it comes to the conversations.
Yes.
And having these amazing soul nourishing moments with people.
Since episode 1.
Since episode 1. And done over 400 now. And it's incredible. But it's like that's never been in question.
Right.
And you have done that in a way that's authentic to every version of you that has done that for 400 plus times. But now the adventure is, how do I create an experience that's even more true to me? Like, that's where you are now. That's why we're here on this couch in your apartment.
That is.
Is because you ask yourself that question. And it's when you ask yourself that question, like, that you become your own differentiator. Because now if I'm seeing this right here in my feed, and I'm like,
what is that?
Danny ran on a couch. What are they doing?
With a blanket.
With a blanket. It looks so cozy. And it's like, this is you though.
Yes.
Like, this is so you.
It's a more real version.
It's a real version of you. This is the version of you that I get and that I see. And what I've always said, well, you wouldn't know this, but what I've always said to Danny from like the second I met him pretty much was like, I need to see more of you in your podcast, because like this of Danny who's relaxed and trust himself, and you show up perfectly in all moments and you trust yourself to do that. You, by very nature of showing up like that and being in an environment that allows you to show up like that, you bring that out of me.
Yes.
This is why this is your game changer.
The boomerang effect.
It is.
By Talia Jacqueline.
Yes, exactly. By our friend Talia, who's an angel. But like, you literally boomerang. You throw the boomerang of your own relaxation and comfort and self-trust to me.
Yes.
And then we have this probably, what is this, going on 3 hours plus conversation?
Yeah, it's different. It's natural. It's real. And it would only make sense that the first one of these was with you, since you helped transition this new phase of me into being. And so this was incredible. Like, thank you so much for doing this. And, you know, one thing that I really loved about the new podcast logo was that it wasn't discounting the old version. No. You know, it was evolving with it. And
absolutely.
So let me evolve with it. And let me ask a challenge of you. We're on the couch. It's the same. It's a different podcast, but it's the same.
I love it.
So what is a challenge you can leave people with to pursue the version of themselves that they're most proud of at the end of their life?
Oh, wow. Okay. I'm going to bring it back to the thing in my life that made the biggest difference. Like, this was the biggest change agent, which was putting myself in small moments of discomfort to build my social confidence. Because the more that you can put yourself in those situations, no matter what level you're at, because I mean, unless you're really at the tippity top and you're just like unstoppable, which is an amazing feeling. I'm quite close to that. I think you're quite close to that. Like, the smallest of micro changes will make a huge impact with ripple effects throughout your entire life. So what I would challenge you to do is to pay attention to yourself, get really curious about when you're going about your day and something happens and you feel a little hesitation, and then act on it. That's my challenge. And I'll give an example. If you're in a workout class and the instructor is like, what's everyone for Halloween? And then your gut reaction is like, I don't want to say anything. I'm not going to participate. What if you participated? What if you screamed out your answer? Like, that's what I'm talking about. It's the smallest moments where you can choose a different path, where you can show up in a way that's a little different and prove to yourself that you could do it, and then it wasn't scary and it actually felt pretty good. Like, if you can incorporate more of those moments in your everyday life, you will build on the reps of social confidence and become that person who walks into a room and is unfazed and totally comfortable and can, like you said to me, show up to the party alone and feel no level of discomfort or anxiety. Like that, if you continue to do that every single day, that's what you will do. So I challenge you to act on your discomfort.
So beautifully said. Where should we send people to connect with you further, other than the walks?
Oh, of course. So we're out there walking 5 miles every Saturday at 8 a.m. It's Austin and San Francisco and more cities soon. And that's at theboardwalks.com. Oh my gosh, this is so funny. I like this part. It feels so different than what we were just doing. It's hilarious. So anyway, So there's that. And then my name is Elle Beecher, and you can find me on Instagram stories, sharing my deepest, darkest secrets and cross-posting them to Twitter. Thanks to Danny pushing me into full authenticity. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Like, come find me on Twitter and everywhere that you can find my name.
So wonderful. All linked down below. Thank you so much for being you. I'm so grateful to call you a friend.
Thank you.
And for continuing to push me into my greatest freedom.